right, it is 6:10, and we're now going to call the meeting, the regular council meeting of the Village of Franklin scheduled for April 14th, 2025. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everyone. Dana, can we do a roll call, please?
Trustee Hanson.
Here.
Trustee Sullivan.
Here.
Trustee Gates.
Here.
President Goldberg.
Here.
Trustee Salapua.
Here.
Trustee Fair.
Here.
Trustee Salter's not here.
Excellent. Next is the adoption of our agenda. Does anybody have any comments, proposed additions, subtractions? Angelina, as you can see, we did do initial adjusting. We've moved special reports to the end and moved old business and new business up.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank you so much. I
Yep.
appreciate that.
Yep.
Can we add something to the agenda for, process and authority?
So is this something new that would go under new business, a new discussion, you're saying?
New business, yeah.
What would be the subject?
Process and authority for approving civic event permits, and then, waiver authority from village policies.
Isn't that consent agenda? Isn't that
Well-
the civic event permits?
I can go into it, or we could talk about it in
Is
new
it just a
business.
discussion, or are you looking for action?
Both.
Okay. I'd like to add, pursuant to our discussion that we just left, I'd like to add wherever you think, probably new business, a resolution or action, a resolution to send a letter to our two senators regarding a potential project in the village.
So consider a resolution to, what's the body?
Senators
State.
Bayer and Moss.
All right, that's good enough. We'll get into details on it when we get there.
Okay.
Anybody else? All right, so we have our agenda with 2 additions into new business. Anybody have any other comments? Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we have our agenda. Minutes from our March 10th meeting. David, I'll start down with you. You got any comments?
No.
Abby?
Nope.
No comments.
Pam?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Angelina?
Nope.
All right, I just have a couple typo-type comments. Page 4, Administrator Report. In that first sentence, Schubert explained to council that she's been very busy with budget, and I think it should say, and police contract negotiations. They're not budget contract negotiations, just so we know that's the police contracts you've been working on.
Good catch.
Page 5, Main Street Franklin Report, just in the second sentence, I think that's supposed to be repurpose instead of repropose. And then, just for a point of order, in the motion, at the bottom of page 5, it was to schedule the first reading of the proposed amendment. And that's all I had.
Sorry, I have one thing and I don't see it. We
Okay.
did have a discussion about procurements. Where was that? And I don't see it reflected in here.
Procurement.
just like
Remind
we
me, what were you
were
talking about?
kind of like the need for better oversight of procurements, the need for like a handle on who our vendors are, like what
I remember
contracts we
that was
have.
something you brought up.
But where was it? Because I don't.
Wouldn't it have been in discussion around the police budget?
It wasn't specific to police, but
No, it
remember
was
we
later
had,
in the
Was it?
meeting than that.
because
I
I want to make
Was it,
sure.
was when we were doing the bills?
No,
Because we had asked,
something triggered the comment, I know that.
it's, the point I'm trying to make is that it's still like outstanding that this council wanted to get a better handle on procurements and,
We had kind of decided that almost everything needed to like be reviewed and taken
yeah,
out to
but I
bid.
thought there was a conversation that took place where,
I wonder if it happened in the workshop ahead.
Oh,
I bet that's where it was.
okay.
Yeah. We had the workshop before to talk about the police budget, so
Yeah.
that would have made sense why it wouldn't be reflected in
Okay.
here.
yep.
That's right.
Okay. All right.
But I
thank you.
haven't
And
lost
she
sight
took
of
it as
that,
a
that's
to-do.
still a to-do, we were gonna get through budget, and then I said this summer, I'm basically gonna pull everything, it's time for a refresh, almost everything needs to
Yeah.
be taken out to bid.
Okay. That being said then, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is public requests and comments. So if anybody in the audience wants to address something that isn't already on the agenda, now's the time. You'll get 3 minutes to speak your piece.
I'll take my time and Natalia's time. So 6 minutes, please. Daniel Schub, 32334 Franklin Road, Franklin, Michigan. We are here to raise a serious and urgent concern about illegal fences that the village officials allow to be constructed in the historic district. These fences have been built against village and historic district ordinances and without the required permits or approvals from the Historic District Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals. Certain village officials have failed to uphold these ordinances and enforce the law. Even more concerning are the signs of favoritism and preferential treatment shown to specific residents, all under President Goldberg's stewardship. One is at 32350 Franklin, between their property and ours, and another on Carroll Avenue. Tonight, we'd like to focus on a situation at 32350 Franklin Road. This property now has 2 brand-new 6-foot privacy fences constructed less than 2 feet from our house and windows. Certain village officials allowed this construction to proceed under the false claim of repairs, but let us be very clear, any repair or modification within the historic district requires approval from the HDC. Our neighbor, Mr. Hinant, is fully aware of this. He previously served as a commissioner on the HDC. Between 2021 and 2024, the Hinants applied 3 separate times to the ZBA to replace their deteriorating and dangerous fences with the new ones. Each application was denied. The ZBA established that Hinants do have enough space for the setback as required per village ordinances. At every hearing, the village building official, Mr. Dinan, confirmed that the fences could not be repaired and needed to be removed. In August 2024, the building official and code enforcement officer issued a formal letter requiring the Hinants to remove the fence within 30 days, stating that all legal options to repair or retain the fences have been exhausted. However, certain council members, some still serving, interfered instead of enforcing that order. The former village administrator later issued a letter stating that the council requested to delay the removal actions while the council reconsidering the changes to the fence ordinances in the historic district. President Lamont, along with the sitting council at that time, then tasked the Planning Commission with the reviewing those changes. Subsequently, President Goldberg replaced President Lamont, and the Planning Commission reported to new council members headed by President Goldberg, advising against these changes. McKenna prepared a full report for the Planning Commission detailing Hinant's fence history and the ZBA decisions. We addressed all these in detail at the October and November 2024 Planning Commission meetings. The logical, proper conclusion would have been to lift the hold on removal, which, as it appears, applied only to this specific fence, as the other fences and decisions were made in the historic district while the council considered changes to the ordinances. But that did not happen. We had no other option to hire an attorney. According to communication from village attorney, Mr. Gojgaj, to our attorney, the village instead allowed the Heenans to move forward by classifying the work as a repair. We then submitted a FOIA request asking for documentation of this decision. The village responded that no such documents exist. On March 31st and April 1st, 2025, the Heenans removed the old fence entirely and installed 2 new 6-foot privacy fences, replacing every post and panel. This is not a repair. It is a complete replacement. In Michigan, a non-conforming fence, also known as grandfathered fence, loses its protected status when it is demolished and rebuilt in a way that violates current zoning regulations. Once a non-conforming use is discontinued, it cannot be reestablished. To make matters worse, the new fence was installed with the unfinished side facing our home, which is clear violation of the village code that requires the more finished side to face outward. We provided photo and video documentation of this. The fence panel facing Franklin Road was installed correctly with the finished side facing out. The panels facing us were installed with the unfinished side facing us. This proves that the Heenans understood the ordinance but chose to ignore it in our case. During the construction, we sent multiple emails along with photos and video evidence to the village administrator, President Goldberg, village attorney, building official, code enforcement officer, and others. Since it was copied to all of you, I hope you also read it. The village administrator responded to our first initial email by insisting the work was a repair and dismissed the evidence we provided. Others never responded. This was not a misunderstanding or a clerical error. It was a deliberate decision by the village officials under the stewardship of President Goldberg to ignore the law. They approved this so-called repair, which was known it was not a repair, or decided to look away, allowing Heenans to do what they wanted. We believe the actions or inaction by President Goldberg, the village administrator, and the village attorney represent a clear abuse of power. They have selectively enforced ordinances, undermining ZBA decisions, and overridden the authority of the building official and code enforcement officer, all to benefit specific residents. President Goldberg has told us directly that things are done differently in Franklin, that who you know matters, and how long one lived in Franklin matters. And that challenging this system is opening a certain Pandora's box that could make life difficult for our family. Apparently, he is making sure his statements are correct and implementing them as promised. Trustee Seltzer reinforced that message.
6 minutes, that's enough for you.
No, I'm not done.
6 minutes. You know
It's
you're
not
done.
6 minutes.
No, you are done.
Trustee Seltzer reinforced that message when he ambushed us in our backyard in front of our 2 sons, telling us to move out of Franklin, boasting that he has arranged with the ZBA to approve the Heenans fence, an application that was later denied. We respectfully ask the council to launch a full investigation, correct the violation, impose appropriate consequences on those responsible for violating ordinances or abusing their authority, and restore the public's trust by ensuring all residents are held to the same legal standard. We are prepared to provide all supporting documents to help with this investigation, as we have photos, videos, and responses to our FOIA requests that clearly support these claims. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Kathy?
Hi, my name is Kathy Ehrlich. I at 26745 Crestwood. I am here as the president of the FCA today. I wanted to let you all know that the FCA is in good standing, and I wanted to share some upcoming events. We have currently 303 members, which is already more members than we had last year, all of last year. In addition to our annual dues, we've received strong support through donations as well, providing about 20% of our total income. So while we're not nearly to our lofty goal of 100% participation, we're getting closer one family at a time. Regarding our 501(c) status, we have applied, we have given all of the information that was needed, we've updated all the reports that have been needed, we've paid anything that needed to be paid. I don't think there was anything that needed to be paid, but everything is into the IRS that needed to be into the IRS in time, in the right time. We are still waiting for the IRS workers to give us the approval, because there are no IRS workers right now doing a whole lot of work. We are stuck in limbo. We do, however, have a very strong board with an amazing new treasurer, Matt Howell. Matt's been the treasurer for the Detroit Parade Company for over 30 years, and he's really gotten us all cleared up and back into action. So I wanted to introduce, we also are supported by two tremendous sponsors this year. Novak Real Estate Partners is sponsoring both our Mother's Day and our Father's Day events. And the Franklin Historical Society is sponsoring all 3 of our music events, 2 on the green and 1 on the gazebo. We have a full calendar of events that will be out within the next couple of weeks. They've gone to the printer, and I'll be picking them up at the end of the week, including our Villager, which will be in the mail soon. I want to share just about our 2 next events that are coming. Our Mother's Day event will be on Wednesday, May 7th from 5 to 7. Novak Real Estate Partners will be supplying free ice cream from Ray's, tattoos, and a giant inflatable obstacle course. We will also have a make-your-own flower bouquet station for kids to make for their moms. On Father's Day weekend, we're doing something very new and different. We'll be having an actual camp out on the park. This fun event will be Saturday night, 6 p.m., June 14th, and run through Sunday morning, Father's Day. Families can set up tents, they can sleep outside if they so choose, or they can go home to sleep and come back for breakfast the next morning if they like. We'll have
So fun.
We'll have a campfire, s'mores, a gaga pit, badminton, and fun nighttime games as well. Our scout troop will be involved, and dinner and breakfast will be supplied. The campout is also sponsored by Novak Real Estate Partners. However, there will be a per-person charge to cover all the extras, with FCA members, of course, getting a discounted rate. So we invite everyone to join us for these very fun events, and we hope that you will please support our park and your community, by becoming an FCA member. Our villagers should be out within a couple weeks.
Thank you, Kathy.
Do you
Anybody-
want us to hold comments to those comments, to our council report?
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's not a back
Okay,
and
that's,
forth
I just wanted to make
conversation.
sure, yeah, I just wanted to make sure.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. We'll close public comments, and we will start with our reports of officers and agents. Start with Chief Lawson. Good evening, sir.
Start with, is there any questions about the report that you received for this last month?
Just one quick one. What does, how are we defining written complaints? So I saw written complaints on there, and what does that mean?
Written complaints is, so if it's a complaint where we want to document it more thoroughly, where we're going to put people within the report, property, in a narrative, that would be a written complaint.
Okay.
If we go to an alarm and that everything is secure, that's more of a, it's called a D card. So a written complaint is more of just a report documentation for future use.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Anything else from anyone? Just a couple things. I know you have a really long night, but a couple of, we're really excited about this first thing. Meg and I have partnered with the Oakland Community Health Network and the West Bloomfield Police Department, my former department, to launch a co-responder program. It's something that I believe Trustee Hansen brought up to me when I first got here. And what a co-responder program is it places a professional mental health worker alongside of our officers, available Monday through Friday, to assist with calls involving mental health concerns and substance abuse issues. Now, the primary goal of this program is to connect individuals to services that they need, while also reducing repeat calls of police services, right? In addition to providing on-the-spot support, the co-responder will play a critical role in de-escalation, which is very important, obviously, offering consultation on mental health issues and petitions, providing follow-up resources, support to individuals and families, assisting in natural deaths or other deaths, and linking people to crisis intervention and long-term treatment providers. Now, I looked at this last fall with Bloomfield Township, Auburn Hills, and Birmingham, and they said it'd be about $50,000 a year. And I knew that some of you would not go for that, and I agree. So we have convinced West Bloomfield to pay 95% of the fees for this. So splitting between Franklin and Bingham Farms is $2,500 a year for basically a full-time co-responder that will come out anytime we need them, and they will ride with us several days a week. So we're getting an absolute great deal. We've bought lots of lunches and given a lot of hugs for this. But I think it's definitely a win for the community and for the police department. So moving on, I know you have a busy night.
Can I ask a question before you leave
Yes,
that?
absolutely.
So if an officer or officers go to a call and they come to understand that this is the kind of call that would need some other professional help, would they make that call on the site?
Yes.
Okay. If it's already a call that might need that kind of person, like it's, going there, it's a domestic, would that person go with them then?
If the person's available or not.
they're available,
So it's
okay.
going to be West Bloomfield
Yeah,
and us.
Uh-huh.
They're also going to share services with Orchard Lake, Kegel Harbor, and Sylvan Lake.
okay,
But I believe that our calls for service and West Bloomfield calls for service are a little bit higher.
Yeah.
So when that person's available, they'll certainly be dispatched this way through our dispatch center at Bloomfield Township. And there'll be other occasions where they're actually going to be riding with our officers. Now, if they're not available, if it's off hours, they're going to do follow-up. So the officer will
follow-up too, okay.
de-escalate the scene, take the information, and they can liaison with that person through the phone or a follow-up later on.
What kind of professional background are you looking for or expecting?
So they typically employ psychologists or social workers.
Okay, thank you.
And I can say that I worked with this program, we had it in Troy, we had available to us 2 resource officers. And what we found in using the program administratively speaking is you underestimate how many calls that they could be really helpful and relevant on. As in, we had all of this data saying that we were gonna, bring this program forward. It far exceeded our expectations. One such example I remember, I had to evacuate an apartment complex that no longer had heat. But that put a lot of people out in the winter. They didn't have resources. This was a place we used our resource officer. They came over. They talked to individuals with us, with the city as we were putting this out. Again, this isn't Troy, not here, but they were able to move through. Then they do a great job at following back up, making sure people got the resources that they need. And that work that they're doing alleviates work that our PD would be doing, because there are a portion of calls that are made that are not necessarily directed at law enforcement and instead could be solved through a mental health component. So we're incredibly fortunate that kind of all the chips have fallen into place to be able to bring this service over to our residents of Franklin. I'm very excited to see it come in, and as it comes in, we're going to be able to be reporting some data for you on that as far as like number of calls that they're out there for us or ways in which that they're helping our community. But really this speaks a lot to Chief Lawson's relationships around in other communities to be able to help us kind of broker this agreement and get this person over here. So we're very excited for this.
Great work.
Yeah, can you put, like, this kind of is a service that Franklin offers, back to Trustee Gates' question last meeting. Can you put how this works on the website or in the newsletter so it's understood and we can start speaking to it in our conversations with residents, that there's a mental health resource officer available through the police? Because I think that celebrating these services that Franklin's providing, the police department is leveraging, is important for our residents to be aware of. So when they ask, like, where do our taxes go? We can say this, or, oh, that new police chief, what do you think about him? Like, well, so I just, because I think it's a good, feel-good story, and communicating that is important.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question about the scope of this? In the event it's not a police matter, but there still might be some sort of mental health component, are residents able to still leverage the service? Meaning, like, no crime has been committed, or there's not any fear that one is going to be committed, but there still might be a mental health emergency. Does that make sense? Like, what's the true bounds of?
I think it would be a
a
case-by-case basis. I think our ordinance officer has gone on different calls where we recognize there's some mental health issues there and
Right.
they may need some assistance, and we certainly would get a hold of the social worker or psychologist to assist with that.
Good. I
But it
just
would
don't-
be upon our recommendation to deploy them.
Okay, I just don't want residents to think, it has to reach a certain point in order to invoke this service. So if we can mitigate it before it becomes a true
Absolutely.
challenge or
And I can
true emergency.
dive down into that a little bit more and get a better answer for you.
Thank you. Great.
The final thing I want to talk about real quick is I want to use some forfeiture money. We have about $32,000 of state forfeiture, and I want to use about $12,000. Currently, we have a Glock 9mm pistols that we use, and I want to keep those pistols the same platform, but I want to move from an iron sight platform that we currently have to what's called a red dot sighting technology. And why do we want to do that? Well, it really is a national trend, and it's, in law enforcement, things move very slowly. But in this circumstance, across the nation, everyone's moving very quickly to this technology because it really is a game changer. With these new red dot sights, you have faster target acquisition, improved accuracy, better low light performance. It certainly is going to decrease liability if we were to ever get involved in an officer-related shooting. It increases officer safety and obviously the community safety. I think it's a very wise investment for that small amount of money. And we're working with CMP, which has the state contract, and they're actually going to exchange our current weapons for the exact same weapons. They'll be brand new, and these should last 10 years, and include the red sight technology and lights on those weapons. So we're going to get 16 at $11,000, which is an amazing deal. So I would just like your, at least approval to use forfeiture money to move forward with that.
Do you recommend it?
Yes, absolutely. So these would be, Chief and I have been working together on this project all the way through. Because it exceeds our threshold for spending, we would need your approval, but for all the reasons that he explained, and for really the vision that we have for over here, for our PD to really bring them up to a high standard here. Administration supports this. Is something that we've talked about and vetted extensively.
Yeah,
I'll move.
yeah, I mean, that forfeiture money should go back into the department for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Should we take a vote? Roll call?
I don't think
Yeah,
we
we
need-
have a motion and a second to approve a $12,000 spend on additional weapons for the police department. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Those are great weapons. They help a lot.
You used it?
I try, I mean, yeah, I mean, when you can have a red dot on what
Yeah.
you're aiming
Oh,
at
yeah.
versus trying to aim to a, plus it lets other people, other officers know that they're.
Just kidding, we got
He got
one
too
more.
excited about the approval.
Doors that way.
We got more, okay.
Is there another deal?
Oh, sorry.
There is, actually.
No, that's my fault.
Boy, yes, you
I
were right
apologize,
there.
that's my fault, yes. So there is, we do have a bid out for the sale of one of our vehicles. We received a couple proposals. Chief, you have one in mind that you want to recommend that we accept?
Yeah, so there was a already set in place by Chief Roberts, kind of rotation of vehicles when they go out of service. This vehicle is due to go out of service, and I did notice that this vehicle only had 70,000 miles. So I was asking the officers and the supervisors, can we keep this vehicle another year? Because I really think the sweet zone to sell a vehicle for the police department is between 80 and 100,000 miles. But for whatever reason, and it's car-by-car basis, that vehicle is not in great shape, and I'd recommend that we go ahead and sell it.
You wanted to keep an extra vehicle, you just don't want.
So
it to
this
just-
year, the current, so this coming up, 25, 26, we won't sell that vehicle.
So, right, but this one you don't think fits that bid?
Correct, sir.
That- got perfect.
Is there a resale value that you anticipated for this vehicle prior to getting these bids? Like, what was your expected?
I think traditionally,
outcome?
what we see in the past year within the village is between 10 and 12,000.
Okay, so these are a little lower than that.
Yeah.
Do you recommend we accept these bids? Or,
It's the only two bids that we received,
and which one, the higher one?
the higher one. The gentleman that bid the highest is the one that usually buys our vehicles year to year.
Probably learning he's got no competition these days. Bids are coming in lower.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, like, they're lower bids for a automotive tariff situation going on, so.
Yeah, I think that moving forward, Meg and I are going to look at, better ways to market the vehicles that we have for sale.
Because they're quite low.
Yeah.
Yeah. We raised that with Chief Roberts a year, don't remember
Yeah,
that, a year
yep.
ago? Because he also made the point that I was the truck maybe, that was in bad shape.
Yeah, I think so. And I remember that one, I felt like was even lower than this.
Yeah, it was
Right, like
lower.
it was
Yeah.
like pretty low to where we were like, is there another way that we can try and get it higher?
Right.
But
I think they recognize that these vehicles a lot of times are, especially during the winter, they're idling quite a bit. Now in the summer, we have a policy that they need to turn the vehicles off when they're at the station here. But, you're looking at, even though it says it has 70,000 miles, it's probably like 150,000 miles on the vehicle.
Does this money go back to your budget?
It goes back to the general fund.
Okay, I would be in favor of like giving it back to the police.
It's sort of,
Okay.
it ends up working its way out
Okay,
there because.
I just don't want them to sell something that's an asset and then not get the resale value of that asset.
And that makes sense, but in 100%, but the police budget, the way that it's structured right now, basically comes right out of the general fund.
Okay.
So it's more like a technicality, it'll get deposited into the general fund, but then when we make our large allocation, the police department, that will go.
Okay.
That'll be like a portion that we're putting over
Okay,
there.
I'll move to approve the acceptance of the bid.
The sale to Chicago Motor.
Yes.
I get a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to sell the Ford Explorer utility vehicle to Chicago Motors for $9,507. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks. Wheeling and dealing over there.
Chief,
Good evening. You've also received our written report from the fire department. I just wanted, since we actually have a nice day of weather, just to remind folks that if they're going to be disposing of yard waste, there is an ordinance in the village that they should follow it. Permits are available online. There are no cost. We just ask that they comply with the requirements that the village has set.
just so you know, we are today taking the first reading of a new burnt ordinance.
Great.
A little more controllable, running
Okay.
all permits through your office, demanding permits, so
Okay.
the ordinance that you're referring to, everybody, is in the process of being changed, so
Right.
we'll make sure everyone knows when that's done.
Okay. And just one point of clarification, I did receive an email regarding Knox boxes and village residents. I don't know where this one went awry, but the fire department uses one vendor. It's the Knox Company. They're out of Arizona. Their website is knoxbox.com. There are no other contractors utilized for anything other than the Knox Company to acquire the box. When the box is purchased, it's purchased by the person who will be placing that box online directly. And I thought that was a little interesting because when I read the email, did you see that? No. So it started with another company, Certisite or something,
Yes.
and I'm like, I have never heard of this. I'm sure it's a great company and I've never heard of them. So the long and the short of it is if there is anyone, whether residential or commercial, that is interested in finding out information, please call me at the fire department, 248-626-9862. I will answer whatever questions you have.
So just so residents know, a Knox box is a secured box at the front of your house that only the the fire department has access to.
Right, only
And
the
that's
police
so they don't have
department.
to
Kurt
kick
has
down
the
your
only
door.
key. You can call him, no, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
No, fire at home, yes, and up north. Each of the fire trucks, each of the police vehicles maintains a key. When you purchase the box, it's a high-security box that is utilized in the event of an emergency. The intent is to gain access to the structure. We do not care, neither police nor fire, and I'll speak on behalf of Kurt, Chief Lawson, that we don't care what your code is. We don't care if we set off the alarm. The intent is if we need to get access to the structure, that we will be able to get access to the structure. Conversely, though, there is no liability release in case we do have to break a door down or we do have to cause damage. It is, we'll call this something akin to playing a lottery. Hopefully, you'll win every time by us being able to find out what the issue or non-issue is, but depending on the situation, we may need to do some harm.
But with a Knox box, it's, assuming it works as needed, or as expected, that would avoid you having to break down someone's
Correct.
door.
Correct, and
get
replacement
in.
doors can be in the thousands.
Correct.
Yes, sir. Yes.
That's it.
It just occurred to me, more people seem to be getting doors that need a code.
Yes.
Would you put a sheet of paper in the Knox box with the
It's
code?
a great question. I wouldn't recommend paper because the boxes are intended to be outside
Yeah.
where humidity and weather conditions can
How
impact.
do you advise people to deal with that problem?
We would literally just take a label maker and we make a plastic label.
Got it, okay.
And we'll put that in. So we've had people who say these Knox boxes are not inexpensive. The least expensive model costs just under $200. And so folks will get a real estate type box with the push buttons. And the problem is anyone that listens to a radio scanner for the fire department will be able to find out what the code is and where the box is. Versus ours, which are a secured key. It's a Medco key. So any legitimate locksmith will not copy that key. And what happens is when the box is installed, we will secure the box and then we provide information as to the box location and the resident's name and contact information up to dispatch, where that information is put into the Clemis dispatch system.
Okay.
So that way both, again, police and fire will have knowledge upon dispatch about the existence of the box.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Anyone
Any other
else?
questions? No?
All right, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a great night. Treasurer report. Lance, how are you, sir?
Good evening, trustees and president. Please accept my written report in the capacity as the village treasurer. The bills list report for this month totals $268,897.67. The amounts on the bills list are consistent with normal monthly spending. The expenditures are generally consistent with our budget. The bills list for this month includes a large entry of $24,505. It's for the completion of the generator installation that was paid to Oak Electric Service. The village has sufficient funds to meet its current and anticipated obligations, and the list of account balances in the package is as of April the 1st that we hold at First Merchant Bank. Any questions?
Anybody?
Oh, on the bills list? Yeah, but I don't.
Oh, no, just to
not for
Lance.
him.
Yeah.
Lance specifically.
No.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, next is our current bills list. So Angelina, if you have any, let's start with you if you've got any questions.
Yeah, so my question is, and this should be tabled for next meeting, so let me know if you would like to.
Okay.
The contract with Bingham Farms.
Yes.
For police.
Yes.
It's 35% of the officer salaries that they reimburse.
So there's two different things when you think about our police contract with Bingham Farms.
Yeah.
The first one is the SAD calculation. So that is tied to the salaries of the actual officers that will be serving that area, as well as some other line items. And that is normally rounds out to about $300,000, and they pay that. In addition to the payments that they collect from their special assessment district, they pay 35% of the overall police budget. It's not tied to salaries. It's a
Okay.
general allocation towards operations,
Okay.
infrastructure, the guns, that we're talking about, all of that.
Okay, so that's what so like employee health insurance, like they pay for 35% of the employee health insurance for the police officers.
They pay, yes, in addition to fully funding two officers.
Yeah, and so the legal fees that we pay for the union contracts, they'll reimburse 35% of that.
Well, if it's not like a line by line item. Each year when we do the budget, so right now is a perfect example, I go to Bingham Farms in 2 weeks and I present our budget and they agree to pay the 35% of that.
Okay, so you add up all of the expenses that relate to the police and then calculate 35% of that.
It's kind of the opposite, so it happens during budget season. It's before the expenses are occurred, right? It's our estimation. Then, during our audit, part of the reason why our audit is so expensive, you see so many things tied to that. During our audit, then our auditor goes through and does a full actuary statement of what was actually paid by Bingham Farms and what the end costs actually were for the year. So that's where you're talking add up all the expenses.
Yeah.
And they made sure that we were right. We didn't estimate too much, because in that case we would return back to Bingham Farms, or that we didn't come in over budget, because then we would request more funds from them.
Because like we spent $3,500 on legal fees for police negotiations, you know, and Meg probably spent how many hours of her time?
A lot.
So, but like, they benefit from the resources that we're giving them. We benefit too, but like,
We pay 100% of
So
those
when we,
costs.
when we do a budget amendment at the
Yes.
end of the year and it
Yes.
changes the police budget, do we
Yes.
go back for another 35% of that?
They,
Okay,
yes,
good.
that gets accounted. In, likewise, when we spend less than we said we were going to, we return funds back over there. As far as legal, that's a line item in the police budget. So even though it was representation for the village, it's still in their budget, so Bingham Farms pays a portion of that because it's in their budget.
would it be diligent of us to ask you to estimate the amount of hours you've spent on police negotiations? Because that's taken time away from our priorities.
Yeah.
And we've had to table a lot of discussions, and she's leading that. It's once in 3 years, so it's not like an annual fee for Bingham Farms. But during police negotiations, that quarter, you're spending what, 20 hours of your week?
Yeah, at least half of my week, at least half.
I don't think that's an unreasonable request.
No, me either.
I mean, I don't know how it'll be,
It'd be
how it'll
difficult for me to
received.
give you an actual number, cause I didn't
For
keep
sure.
receipts from this time, but I can give you estimates about like how much time that took. I mean, it takes, for the way that it worked this year, which will be different next time too, you know, it took at least 3 or 4 months, and it was, you know, 15 and 20 hours a week for
To
that
me, it's
time
like
period.
she's our only strategic, you know, executive officer of this
No, that's
administration.
No,
a
that's a
great,
good
that's a
point.
really
Can
good
we
point.
vote to, do we need to vote on that?
No, I
need to
can
vote on
return
it.
with
You
like
can
an
just do it.
accounting of kind of what I would estimate that with, but what I would preface this with is, last year, when this came up during budget conversations, some of our council members made some very direct comments towards Bingham Farms. And in general, these are my words, they were that Bingham Farms wasn't paying their fair share and making sure we were getting a good deal. Well, that got back to council over there, in which case they were incredibly offended by those accusations, given the amount of accounting that we do to get to the point that we are. So much so that, you know, they started considering what outside police force would look like. So when we have these conversations, I just want us to remain really cognizant of the fact that it's public, that we have a community partner that we're working with, and like to just be careful with our words, because that ended up becoming a bit of an issue. And to be clear, when I came in, I didn't understand the police contract, you know, because I'd never seen one that worked like this before, and I couldn't have sat here and told you that I thought that Bingham Farms was paying a fair share. After working it all the way through and doing contract negotiation, now my time is definitely something that's separate. But they do pay, in my administrative perspective, do pay a very fair share.
That wasn't a pistol.
For police services, I think the agreement that we have is fair and representative, and I think the way that we take this end of year accounting and make sure that we're squared up has been working for us. So that's just my 2 cents. However, my administrative time, absolutely. That's an excellent point, and I can put together like a little report on what I would think that would be.
That would be awesome. And I wouldn't want you to like spend a lot of time on it, but you know, and you have a good grasp, and I think you have a good enough relationship with Bingham Farms that you have merit to your estimates where like they're not gonna question it. But if once every 3 years, Bingham Farms needs to be aware that there's an administrative executive cost to Franklin for the negotiations and the time that takes away from your operations, then maybe that's something to.
I agree, and I think that line item I'm gonna go ahead and guess that that's gonna end up being substantial. It would be a line item that we would add to the budget, that would be like contract negotiation administration or something like that, and allocate a portion of that time. So again, only happens every 3 years, good time to talk about this. I'll follow up at the next meeting with a little report.
So my understanding then that there is no, consideration of any administrator's time in
No.
the current contract?
Really not, no.
Yeah, that's a good
That's
point.
such an interesting
Because to
point,
Susan's point, she said last meeting, she handholds the police officers and spends
We
her
do,
time
I mean, and I still,
doing healthcare administration.
Yeah. I mean, we've got.
I spend a substantial amount of time working with
If we
PD.
wanna allocate it in the budget, I mean, we should disclose it to them, we shouldn't just slip it in, but it's certainly a fair
Yeah.
ask.
Great.
Yeah, I agree. Let me take a look and kind of frame that at what is like an administrative cost, because I work so closely with Chief, but I'm over there every day
fair.
helping get other things, you know, that's definitely a factor, and those are good points.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Another thing, so the leases and the copies,
Yes.
have we done sorry.
I've done an RFP for that, we've been out to bid. I have 2 other bids that I've already met and took quotes from. The last one is Carl Leader, he is a community member, and he currently provides our copy services. Carl was on vacation, I was on vacation, so I haven't gotten an opportunity to meet with Carl, but I need to meet with him to discuss that. The current copy service that we have isn't working. You probably see your copies with big lines through them all the time, and the cost that we're paying is pretty high for what we're getting. Now, Carl would have negotiated this with the village a long time ago, so this is not a reflection on him. It's something that needs to be talked about, but I can tell you that we've already obtained quotes and had meetings, because it's over here, and the PD, with, who are they? Who are the people? Toshiba and Kraft. So I have quotes for those type of services. The last step to kind of close this loop will be to meet with Carl, see where he's at. But I do anticipate being able to save us some money on copies and improve the quality of our printing, and that should come before you in a regular council meeting shortly.
And then to that point, are we prioritizing or taking initiative towards paperless? Like, should we as a council decide if the commissions need paperless agenda packets? I mean, like, are we looking at saving costs on printing? I know every other organization is like putting in some sort of budget. We have paid licenses for Office 365, there's SharePoint collaboration tools. I mean, do we need all this paper for all our commissions? Sometimes those packets don't even get picked up by the commissioners. The blueprints, like, I would be in favor of having the petitioner pay for those blueprints if they don't already, their architect, their attorney.
They do draft those up.
Okay, yeah, so then, like, you know, I think it would be worthwhile to ask our sitting commissioners, do you want only an electronic copy of this agenda before we go forth and print
So in
them?
the other communities, because I go to a lot of community meetings and all the council members or planning commissioners are just sitting there with a laptop in front of them.
That's the next comment I
The
was.
question is though, is it their personal laptops? No. See,
So
you
in
can't
other.
use your own personal laptop to do that. That's the
And
issue.
and to switch to all electronic, in order to do that and make that the mandate in communities that I've worked in the past, that meant that the community would provide like 7 set laptops, and those would just stay up here at the table. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be that they'd be different laptops for planning, and then for you guys, they'd be our laptops, they would be up here, but you would be expected to use that. And then if someone needed something printed, they always could email us and we would get a hard copy of specifically whatever you're looking at. I have never seen where a municipality, not that it hasn't happened, has moved to electronic without providing the means of which to access
That would
it.
be my question, like, if we had to put in for 7
Laptops.
very low capability laptops, just for
Yeah, they don't need
viewing.
much storage. They just
I've
need to
even
have
seen
fast internet.
tablets that
So-
were used.
Surfaces are like $200-300
I've
bucks.
seen tablets.
No, if the concept is you only have to buy 7 for the 4 or so boards that run through here, fine. If that became 28, that's a
No.
completely different story.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Let me-
that's, seems like not a crazy number. Rick? Better go to the cable board. Put money.
We can, let me look and price that out, and let me see if I can roughly like estimate what the cost for printing these packets are, cause it's expensive. Most, I mean, we don't print a ton, I am kind of a paper person, so I do probably print more than the rest of staff, but most of our printing charges are from printing agenda items.
And if, like, we can pay for those screens in 2 years, you know, and those screens last 5 or 6.
And we're being sustainable and conscious to the environment by
Paper
doing that, that
savings.
could be a
Yeah.
win-win. I can create like a little report that we look at, that looks at the cost of that.
And
for us.
then
Doesn't need
I
to
see the internet for the Krieger House is $225. So
Yeah.
is that the cost a month for Krieger
Just
House
leave it
internet?
access the
Yeah.
actual agenda.
Okay, so
Is there,
there's
would
the
there be any grant programs for that? I mean, if we're talking sustainability, there's nothing,
So much and it doesn't work.
It's because of sprinklings. I mean, it's because we have bad service here. We even tried to just get internet here, and like David said, just have it work over there, and that wasn't gonna happen. They were saying that that couldn't work. Now, that was before the FCA received a grant to put in the antennas, or
Yeah.
what, I shouldn't even say the word antenna, the infrastructure at the gazebo. So does that infrastructure now allow us the ability? Possibly, because that would be a change in the situation from when we had first put it over there. But initially, it wasn't going to be possible to take the internet over here to get it over there.
Excuse my delay in response, and Dana reminded me that internet service is being paid for by the cable board.
There you go.
There's a grant every year, we fund that every year, so it's no cost to the village.
So why does it come out of our bills list?
Because it's showing else, the revenues comes on another line
Oh.
item.
Okay.
Thank you.
And we also fund the internet for the police,
Yep.
for the Historical Society, for the library, and for this building also.
And for the
So-
Krieger House?
Yep, and the FCA.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's all funded. And the antenna for the FCA, which allows them to process transactions on labor, on the roundup, with everyone buying their tickets and things, so.
We thank you for your
Yeah.
service. Okay, telephone lease. Do we lease our telephones?
We do. Yep, that started when I was with the village previously, maybe 2022.
Okay, how many telephones do we need to lease?
Kind of a lot. I mean, I have one at building, and then I need one for Bill. So there's two. I've got two in this other office. I have a phone, and we have an economic development director. That's another phone, so that's 5 already. I have one in here for Don. So I don't know. I could be missing some, but
Yeah.
we do use a lot of individual phones in this office.
You got 7 active.
7 active lines.
Okay. And that's all needed in your opinion?
Yes, but we're looking at phone service because when we started looking into internet and pricing for internet and what we're paying for internet, some bundle and offer phone. And if that were the case, there were some cost savings that we were looking at in there. And when we were looking at switching internet providers, it seemed like it could be possible where we're getting stronger internet service and our phones bundled in for a lower price than we were paying for our phones. So we have been looking at that and been in contact with vendors. I could see that shifting. I've been monitoring that under like a priority of my communications plan, phones and internet, and so we've been looking at that, and that could be something I see shifting.
Yeah, that's what I'm,
But they are expensive.
I'm like interested in, like, I don't even have a phone number for work. Like, you know, with Office 365, like you get numbers for people to call.
Here, no,
so
and
doesn't
here,
work. Okay.
because of the Village of Franklin and our demographic, this phone rings off the hook all day. I would not recommend moving away. It actually is a resource that's used constantly. Our villagers love picking up the phone and calling this office.
All the voids, what are those?
Oh, yes. So there were a bunch of voids because we had an update to our main server. And when they did the update to the server, they didn't, the IT didn't incorporate a function that's used when they're printing checks. So then it wasn't in Susan's knowledge, she went to print the checks and they were printing
Yeah.
double-sided.
Missing.
So they had to be void and re-put through. So, and that, we apologize for that, that was a result of getting an upgrade that just didn't trickle down into all the functions of her computer.
But these expenses aren't void.
Correct.
Okay,
Like
so
new checks
With
will be
duplicates.
issued for those if they
So-
haven't
It's
been.
accounted for on here.
Okay,
we pay road commission for Oakland County.
Yes.
Like $30,000 for salt,
yeah.
maybe, and then we pay Johnson, landscaping another 15 for snow plowing and salting.
Mm-hmm.
So do we give him the salt and
Yeah,
he
we buy
actually
the salt.
salts it?
Yeah.
And so,
But there's county roads through Franklin that we have to help pay to maintain. And those county roads aren't ones that Jerry would maintain. And that's why you see two different, the road commission takes care of some through the county and then Jerry takes care of ours. And that's why you see the two different, the same charges in two spots.
okay. And then, the cable franchise fees, do we pay those or does the cable board reimburse us for those?
I'm not sure. on those.
$30,596. You know,
The village receives two types of fees, and they keep 60% of the cable franchise fees, send 40% to the cable board, which we use collectively to fund operations, including televising these meetings and recording them for further broadcast. At the end of the year, we meet and we determine a refund rate, which has been variable from 90% to 50% to 40%. It's variable as they go and look at their long-range plan funding needs to support the ongoing public education and government programs, the PEG grants.
Those fees are paid by consumers who have cable.
Okay. The insurance premium, the one-off for MGOLIT, why is that not with the other insurance?
Ooh, okay, I will be careful on how I discuss this in a public meeting, but we have a retiree in the police department who reached an age to receive Medicare before their spouse. So then, under the contract that was previously established, we're still responsible for providing health care for the spouse until they reach the Medicare. But Blue Cross did not, and under our current plan, would not underwrite it. So it's something that cannot legally be done because they're saying the employee is not still on the plan, so they're not gonna pay for benefits for a spouse. However, it was agreed to in an old contract and had to find a way. It's something that has existed like this forever, and Blue Cross was kind of like, we're not sure how this has worked in the past, but now that you brought it to our attention, it's not gonna work anymore. So we've been in huge union conversations with this with this former union member and his spouse. We had to come up with an agreement to provide comparable benefits, but not the same package or the same benefits that are offered, and thus provide a stipend that will allow for them to have comparable benefits for the next few years until she ages off into Medicare. We're just fortunate that this hasn't existed in another circumstance.
And do we still offer that in the current contract?
It's different now and spelled out on how it will be. It says that if you age out ahead of time that you'll be offered a stipend, but the language that's in the new contract is different because we were really locked in by these like interpretation of comparable plans in this scenario and ended up paying quite a high stipend to go ahead and accommodate that.
Okay.
Do we anticipate that will happen?
No.
Okay, anyway.
Nope.
Okay, and then we pay life insurance and HRA reimbursement,
Yep.
right, on top of healthcare premiums?
Yep.
Okay, for every officer and employee?
Yes. And we used to have a separate plan that would pay those reimbursements, but the plan was costing the village more to administer than it would be for us to just take in the actual statements and pay that out. So we got rid of the plan, I don't know, would have been 2-3 years ago, and now we save money by just basically honoring that directly through the village.
What is the MailChimp code enforcement car washes, $443 for?
Those are two separate things.
Under one line item?
MailChimp is what is the vendor for your newsletter. Car washes is for the PD.
Okay, it says it's for Susan.
No.
She pays it on her credit cards and we reimburse.
Oh, we don't have a village credit card. So Susan pays that on, I guess, monthly
Why
or
don't we have
whenever
a-
they pay it. Yearly, annually.
Why don't we have a government purchase card?
It's a great question.
Can we
We've
pursue
talked about
that?
it in the past.
I thought we had one with Roger.
No, it never, no one ever had Roger do it. Roger did not get it over the finish line.
I
That did not
distinctly
happen.
remember talking about this.
I know
How
that you've
many-
had conversations about it, but it did not happen.
Okay,
Can we
So
have-
we're working on it because we have to have one.
yeah.
I think we should entrust Meg with a government
And it'll
purchase
be more
card
than $1 too.
and a government purchase card limit. I mean, it will come with a
Yep.
limit, but like you
I'll
can use
write a
it.
full, I'll write a full policy
Okay.
for it too, and then I would probably have
Yeah.
two, honestly. The PD needs one and I need one.
Yeah.
So
I would
we would have chief
Someone
be
say
able
something
to
about a deal?
administer one, and so would I.
Did you have one in West Bloomfield? Would a
Yeah, I'm
chief?
sure they did.
And you would have one in Troy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We all had key cards and
And as long
drives.
as you're up there, how do the officers fill their cars?
We pay
Isn't it-
for it. It
We
says.
have cards.
So we have accounts, as far as the gas, we have accounts at BP and at
Yeah.
Speedway.
Okay.
The issue is when we sign up for conferences or Jeff Gorski is working on the property room. He bought new shelves at Menards. He put that on his credit card, which then we have to reimburse.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly putting things on my credit card, so
Yeah.
it would be convenient to have
With-
at least one credit
necessary.
card.
And then it's also a register of expenses that you
Yes.
can cross-check and do due diligence against.
Well, and like for example, I've just been buying my own Adobe subscription because what a pain for me to ask
No.
for a reimbursement on that. You know, so like there are so many areas. Apparently, this was talked about at great lengths when Roger was here. I don't know where the breakdown was. When I first came in, they were like, okay, well, we need to get you, you know, acclimated and added to all the accounts before we'll issue you a credit card. Okay, fine. I'll move forward on this initiative. I'll present it at a council meeting with a policy on how it should be used,
Also,
including
too,
limits.
for like, hotels and
Yeah.
flights, if you
Yeah.
use a government credit card, you get an extended, like, cancellation period. And then for certain states, like Philadelphia, if you use a government credit card, you don't have to pay taxes or hospitality fees because you're a government entity. You fill out, a tax rebate form.
Yep.
So like we could be saving money too, but you have to book your hotel and flights and car rentals on the government credit card.
To be tax exempt, most of the time you do have to use either like the organization or the institution.
But I'm saying
card.
easily, if you check into a
Yep.
hotel, you could use your government credit card and it's not your personal one. You don't have to argue that you're on, or that you're on
100%,
business.
Yeah, because they're not gonna give you a tax exempt form when you're using
Your
your own
personal, exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%, and that's consistent across like basically everything, so,
All right, are we ready to
yeah.
vote on these bills? Do you have any more questions?
I think that was the only things that except for this one.
All right, anybody want to move to approve the bills list?
So moved.
You get a second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second to approve the current bills list. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next is our consent agenda. We have 2 civic event permits, one for the Jewish Family Festival, one for Art in the Village. Both of these are events that have occurred in the past. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Unless somebody wants to take something off for discussion?
Which ones were these? For art,
Before we do discussion, can we have a second?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
sorry. For art in the village, something happens, and Chief, this has to do with blocking off of the streets. I feel like they don't block the streets off long enough for these events. Like, there'll be people thinking, like, the event will still go on and they'll open up Franklin Road. I'm always like, just block the street for the entire event. Because it's just like, people don't know when the event ends, and then they fill out this form for like the actual start and end of the program, but there's lingering people and it just doesn't seem safe. And, you know, obviously the applicant isn't thinking of,
Sure.
you know, the lingering police safety issues, but is there a way to kind of extend the closure an hour after, or, you know, so that way it's safer?
I think the simple answer is yes.
Okay.
So what you have here
Good answer.
is really a change in philosophy. Closing the road under Chief Roberts was different, and he was very particular about how long it would be closed for and getting it back open and making it accessible. Chief Lawson and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and we're all for, you know, the safety, even though it does increase an inconvenience for not being able to use the road. And I can say that Administrator Shin working with PD, we haven't had any issues extending road closures with Chief Lawson, and so we'll continue to do that in a safe manner for these events.
All right.
So Andrea, this is the one for,
Well, I was reading out in the village, Kathy, and I think it's a setup at noon.
The parade's at noon, so this was Jane
Yeah.
application, this isn't for the roundup. So I'm the one who puts, is the one
Okay.
for the,
I want to open for an hour after the roundup closes. Is that okay?
you
want it
hours the
closed?
parade
Yeah,
closes.
yeah.
So the parade's from 12 to 12:30, we go 12 to 1:30.
Yeah, because what happens is the people that park on Evelyn Court, it takes them like 30 minutes to finish walking down Main Street.
Oh, I
Yeah.
think, now I know what you're
Yeah,
talking
because
Yeah.
we're all lined up there, do you remember? And then, like, all the residents start off at Event Bliss, you know, or the Franklin Grill, and then by the time they make their way down here, the road's already open.
Same
So,
with Franklinstein Frenzy is
Yeah.
another one. It used
Yeah.
to be like the moment the parade was over, open the road, but everybody's still walking in the road and they're trick or treating. It's not safe.
so
to
can you
open.
do 1:30 when you apply? Okay,
So
awesome.
one of the things that we're doing different this year, and one of my concerns is I worked a lot of big events in my previous job, and we're going to be bringing in some pretty heavy barricades from the city of Novi that they're going to loan us on Labor Day. So it's actually going to take us quite a bit longer to break everything down.
Yep.
So it shouldn't be an issue at all.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just,
good.
Thank you.
anyone who has a problem. Okay. Thanks, Kathy, thanks, guys.
Yep, so we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, next item is old business. First item is consider the first reading of the proposed amendment to Village Code Section 307, regulations dealing with open burning. The last time we discussed this, a couple people had indicated they were gonna send you proposed changes, which
Yep.
appear to be highlighted in the ordinance you've returned back. I mean, does anyone, do we have questions? I mean-
No, so, the only thing that I was thinking about, because we had talked about kind of two things. One, Tony came in and brought this up unprompted, not knowing that we were gonna discuss it. And then we talked about revenue sources. And to me, like, it just jumped off the page when Tony stood up. What happens if somebody doesn't file a permit? Nothing, it's a slap on the wrist. I think we could put a fee schedule in, or a fine schedule. That if somebody's doing open burning
Yeah.
without getting a permit.
Penalty provision.
Yeah, so like what I was thinking, so under 307.3 is burn permit, we would then just kick that first one down to 307.3.1, and then it would read the same, and then 307.3.2 could be failure to acquire the requisite permit. Then-
Completely agree with you.
Yeah, and then have failure to acquire the requisite permit will result in a fine based on the following schedule. And the way that I figured that we could do it is like the first one can be a low dollar threshold, like $25, and then have a more drastic. It's like, you're on notice.
Habitual-
Yeah,
habitual.
exactly.
25, 100.
I did like 100, or sorry, 25, second is 125, so the addition of 100, and then the next one would be 150, it's 25 after that.
Violations, which makes it a civil, yeah. So in our various ordinances, we do have violations that won't exceed $500 that we typically use. I can do that, or we can do the staggered schedule that you're suggesting.
My preference, just based off of burn permit, would be the staggered. But how do we, sorry, let me, I guess, ask a more probing question, which is, what does the not to exceed 500 mean? Because that feels discretionary.
It is a civil violation,
Mhm.
and it's enforced by the code enforcement officer, and if it gets to court, then I think the court decides.
I would rather not put it in the discretion of the code officer. I think codifying it in the ordinance, and because then it's like, if the code officer wasn't on duty when they violated it, are they giving a post-action fine based off a report from a neighbor? Like, can't we just codify it in here and it be a burn permit escalating fee schedule?
Yeah, absolutely. And what I actually would recommend, we had talked about a fee schedule and like the need to do this. This is on my like next project list. I think that there are other fines that we should start bringing in-house, and instead of escalating, you know, to civil infraction, that we're
Absolutely.
collecting fines, because with code enforcement right now, I have a number of issues that are like definitely a violation of the ordinance, but then when we look at it, if we have to take it to court and run it all the way through, you know, maybe there's a little, you know, our ordinances could always use a tweak or whatever, and then, so then we don't issue the citation because, you know, this could potentially be an issue in court, like, are we really going to be able to defend it with the current ordinance, but then we don't have any teeth to enforce, we're kind of like stuck. So I think this is like bringing up a much bigger point that we should look at, and when we adopt this fee schedule, which I do think is a good idea, we can reference it in ordinances and adjust the fee schedule annually as fit, as long as the ordinance is just referencing the annual fee schedule and not actual dollar amounts, or we put them in and then say, subject to the amounts of the annual fee schedule, then we're doing that, and I think that there are a number of code enforcement ordinances that we should consider doing this for.
Makes sense.
It would give more authority kind of to our code enforcement to do that, and it's well within. So I would recommend that we start here, and then we loop this into a larger conversation as we move through with fee schedule and codifying ordinances to look where we can put these fees in.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Mike.
So in that regards, then I would take it back and add some edits here for that. And I'm clear on kind of what we're looking at and the fines there, so I have the direction I need to make those changes for the next meeting.
Guys, Kathy, Rick, guys? No. All right, so we are, this is our, we're having, this would be our first reading if we approve the first reading. So the changes that we're proposing are not substantive. Seems like they would be appropriate to be able to add between a first and second reading.
Yeah.
So are you okay, just
Yes.
you and Peter working on this
Yep.
and bringing it back next month when we go to do a second reading versus this doesn't need to go to planning and,
No,
No.
we can handle this, as long as you guys motion it up, along with
Yeah.
proposed changes, approve it, we'll work.
so before we take the motion, so what are we adding, a violation fee schedule?
Yes.
Or terms of violation and then a violation fee schedule?
Yes, basically, the failure to secure a permit will be based, will, you know, have these following fees. We'll have it tiered based on number of violations, and we'll define better, obviously, what that means.
So we would have a motion to have the first reading of the open burn ordinance with direction to our village attorney and village administrator to revise section 307.3 to incorporate, was it an approval process or a permitting?
It would just be.
Escalating fee schedule.
Yeah, it would be to essentially have a fee schedule attached to failure to secure a permit.
All right, so yeah, so a provision for someone who fails to secure and then a penalty fee schedule. And then we'll bring that back, assuming it passes today, and then we'll consider it when we do our second reading.
One clarification, trustee Sally, you said move 307.3.
So 307.3 is the burn permit, so I think logically nestling it on you can either do it separate and just have something, or you can put it directly under. So if you put it directly under, you just move it to, you'd have, right now, 307.3 is burn permit, and then lists out the entire substantive body of it. You could just move that to .1 and then do the fee schedule at .2.
Yep, got it.
Should we do what you recommended last meeting, though, and include a reference to a fee schedule, so we can update the fee schedule?
The only thing that I would, the caution on that, because that came to mind when you were speaking of it, is that are we gonna tier all of our failures to secure a permit at the same fines? So for instance, here, failure to get a permit for burn the first time, $25, but a more egregious ordinance maybe it would be more.
In fee schedules that I've worked in the past, they've just been really dense and would lay them all out individually.
Like
Gotcha.
burn ordinance violation fee schedule.
You know,
this-
but
Yeah,
building
that makes
permit
sense.
is this, and they are kind of dense to build initially, but then, you know, you get 50 pages of literally everything in there, and then each year we're only updating one document, but they all reference back to this fee
Yeah, that way we
schedule.
don't have to reapprove an ordinance every time we wanna increase or decrease a fee.
But we
Yeah.
wouldn't necessarily be locked in at those
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
violation, I can tie them to individual structures there. If it already existed as a document, I would say we don't even spell it out, we say per the fee schedule, but since that fee schedule doesn't exist right now, I think it makes sense to actually spell it out in the ordinance and then add a caveat that says, you know, consistent with the annual fee
Perfect.
schedule or something to that regard.
Yep.
Okay, so you'll put, financial numbers in this ordinance and then a, catch-all
Yeah.
that says these fees are subject to change per the annual fee schedule. And then once we get a fee schedule document, it will link to that fee schedule document.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so, if we don't, this can go one of two ways. We can either come back and amend this once we have a fee schedule to just remove that item.
Yep,
Or we can specifically call out within this language that if there's a conflict between the fee schedule and the language that the fee schedule carries.
I'll probably add that language just in case,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because who knows when
Right.
we get back to something, but then I'll keep it in the front of my mind, because essentially, once we get our fee schedule, we should go back and get rid of those numbers, but just in case, it probably makes sense to spell out that conflict
Right.
right away, in my opinion. So I'll work on getting that changed and bringing it to the next meeting.
Makes sense.
All right, so I don't know if we ever officially made the motion I suggested, but I need someone to make a motion to approve the first reading of the open burning ordinance, subject to the proposed changes.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next is the consideration of the approval of the Metro Act bilateral permit to Extenet system. This was one that we looked at last meeting. Trustee Sally had identified some good questions, which we've, I believe, now gotten answers to. The concern at the time was that this underground line was going to a pole and whether they were asking to put the pole in as well.
Yeah.
We've since come to find that, one, the pole's already been installed, and two, the pole sits inside the Farmington Hills right-of-way, so that's why we never knew about it. Although the transformer and the trench to get to it is in our village, so they are asking to run an underground line to service that node. So, they resubmitted their application with some clarifications, clearly states that they're not asking for a cell node, and we need to take action on it today. So anyone have any discussion or questions on this permit?
The only comment I have is, the Michigan Public Service Commission kind of dictates the permit in the language in there. I think I prepared it last time, I'll submit it to administration, but it's all dictated by MPSC. I prepared it, so you guys approve it, they'll sign it, they most likely will sign it as president, other than that, it's part of the Metro Act.
Does this installation improve, what does it improve?
Would-
Like, how do the residents benefit from this?
Our residents will have improved cell service in the area, but the poignant question here is two things. One, we have no control over Farmington Hills' approval of the cell node. So really the question becomes whether or not we would draw a line in the sand to say, like, we're not gonna put the fiber optics to the pole, but we don't even have that authority, right? We'd get sued under the state.
Because the pole's already there.
No, it has nothing to do with the pole, it has to do with
The
state.
Metro Act.
Yeah, the Metro
Michigan
Act.
Service Public.
Yeah, it's pretty vague, it just says a municipality cannot unreasonably withhold approval.
Right.
Since we are forced to approve it, could we get any added benefit from it? Like, that's why, if we're gonna approve it anyway, should we be looking at what this infrastructure could also provide to the residents?
I think it would improve cell service, no telecommunications actually, you know, around the area.
It absolutely will. It's a T-Mobile node that's sitting down in the hole in front of Franklin Country Club. I live right there. Now, I have Verizon, but I pull out of my house, I turn left, Rick lives right there. You drive past Franklin Country Club, and then you lose your call until you get back up at 13 Mile. So it won't help the Verizon users, but it will certainly help the T-Mobile users in the area.
If there's any left.
If there's any left, I guess, yeah.
Sorry, cable expert.
No, this is two questions. Number one, there is a brand-new driveway between the transformer and where they're going to trench right through that. Are they obligated to repair that?
Yeah. absolutely.
Okay. Well, I just know,
Yeah.
I don't know, and they're in the right of way.
Under that permit, they're required to repair any damage.
Okay.
So do we have any liability that we would be subject to from the new construction, the homeowner of the new construction?
No, well, as a lawyer, you know that anyone can file a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Typically, no, we're pretty isolated, they indemnify us, they have insurance for us, and we have qualified immunity.
Okay, thank you.
The council may not know, this is a house under construction. There is no resident there. It may be appropriate for the village to reach out to the resident or the future resident, to let them know what's happening. Because I'm not sure they're watching these meetings or aware of this is going to go on, and they're going to see it trenching throughout their property, 267 feet worth.
Well, I think that's a really good point.
Normally, the company that is going to be doing the trenching will
Contact the
provide
homeowner.
notice to the residents. I don't want to start a precedent where on some we're able to catch it and that we're able to notify you from the village, but others that we're not, or what the policy would be for notifying, or how many houses down do we notify. The notice requirements are on the applicant for where they're doing that.
Well, only because the house is not inhabitable right now. There's no one there to notify. I'm just,
Sorry, I'm sorry.
go ahead. That was my comment, just, as a common courtesy to this future homeowner, let them know what's going on at least.
Meg brings up a good point. We issue permits for the Metro Act or Small Cell Act, and then these entities have this permit for 15 or 20 years. They can access it to repair, modify, stuff like that. Now, common courtesy is they should provide notice to us to let us know that they're working on right-of-ways, but they do have that permit. Not for this specific one until you guys approve, but Extenet, DTE had permits throughout the village that we've granted before.
And because they have the permits and with the work that they're doing, they're able to do work without us being notified. So there is no way for me to actually say that, like, I could catch everyone and give that notice. I don't want to start a precedent where people are relying or waiting for notice from the village when this work can happen at any time under this permit.
Understood, but at least in this case, anytime you agree to a permit, in this case, you accept a permit or grant the permit, at initial grant, you may want to notify the person. At that point, whatever they do after that, 15 years, you don't care, but at least you'll know when you grant a permit. You may want to consider, in this case especially, notifying someone that it's granted and they can deal with it from there. It's up to you guys.
Right, thanks, Rick.
In all likelihood, if that driveway is damaged, if I were the homeowner, I'd call in the developer, the builder, because I don't want to move into a new house with a bad driveway. But you're right, that's not the village.
Right.
But I acknowledge what Rick is saying.
All right,
Do you need a motion, or
yep.
do you have that? Okay.
We're gonna take action on this permit? Anybody wanna make a motion to approve the Metro Act bilateral permit to Extenet system?
So moved.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. So we asked Meg and staff to look into what it would potentially entail for us to consider moving council meetings to the church. Meg put together a nice memo which sort of outlines the financial aspect of it. In addition to the financial aspect of it, I did not realize 3.5 extra hours of setup time each time. That's pretty significant. So we had considered doing this because of, I think initially, because of our close quarters right now. I mean, right now, we're pretty tight and Mike's not here.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even imagine where Mike would be sitting right now.
No.
So we had this dive into looking at the church, which could still always be a possibility. They have to do some upgrading there in order for it to really work, and where that financing comes from would have to be addressed. But in a sort of a alternate idea, which would be to keep things here, Meg, and I don't know if anyone else in the office who came up with this idea, but the idea of sort of turning our DASC, whatever this thing's called, almost to continue. Right now, we've got the three of them sitting at two different desks. We've got half this table wasting space. We've got all this wasted space. What Meg, I'm assuming, is proposing is three new tables where we would all sit around. 4 of us would be here, and then the rest would be going that way. Frankly, it allows us to face each other a little more, so we actually would be interacting with each other more. From the general setup of a traditional community room, if you go to even, Beverly Hills, who has a meeting room, Bingham Farms even has. Bingham Farms is a little different, more like this, but a traditional Novi West Bloomfield, it is a curved thing, so that the people at the end, like Angelina, would sort of be looking at David and Abby, and we would be talking sort of at each other as opposed to down to each other. But more importantly, it would create a space there. From what you guesstimated, what did you say, 7 inches on each side of us?
Right now, I would say we have 0 inches on either side of you. I mean, there isn't even really space for you to sit at this table with them. I mean, and I did this, so it's not to scale, obviously. I'm not an architect, but just for a visual aid. But when we did the math, we brought in actual banquet tables, lined them up to see what they would look like in here and what that space, at one 8-foot table across the back, with 2 6-foot tables running here, eliminating this table, and the table that Dana's sitting at, and bringing us into the end of the 6-foot table would allow for you guys to have 7 inches of your own space in
7
this room.
inches?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, luxury. Now, we played with a lot of different layouts, but this is a very strange shaped room. It's narrow and long, so it can be difficult to accommodate. The other thing is that there really isn't another good spot for the screen. And so this plan leaves the projector and the screen in the same location, but, and I'm for sure open to suggestions, but this is really the only place that I can see where community and the participants can see the screen. So there's that. The other thing that I would suggest in this plan is, I know that these chairs are, part of the aesthetic, and everyone's really fond of them. They take up a lot of room, they're uncomfortable, and they're not practical for bringing people into this space. If we removed these chairs and purchased a new chair that is a sleeker style, we would be able to get more people into this room to view versus like kind of the clunky chairs that we have right now. Yes.
Thank you for this. I know I'm like very pro, let's move this meeting, but the data speaks otherwise. Would we be able to give these chairs to the Historical Society for their museum? Like keep them in the village? Pete, would the Historical Society want the chairs, maybe? If we had to get rid of them?
Many of them have plaques on them.
Where are the plaques?
They're on the back.
Oh, so to keep them in the museum? The ones that at least have the plaques?
Right. I could certainly try to find that out. I wouldn't know offhand, wouldn't want to speak for them.
Yeah, that way we can like rehome them.
The other thing is that it, you know, the chairs have the plaques. Maybe we put new plaques on the new chairs too, so that we can keep that memory alive and that the intent is still there. We're just using a different chair.
Or a,
Or a
plaque.
on the wall, or like find a different solution there, so,
Yeah.
yeah. The other thing that this second plan does is it opens it up for all the meetings. So planning commission, you know, ZBA, HCC, they all have to sit very cozy like this too. Having something like a different table structure would allow more space for the other board.
Theoretically, they could be exclusive of each other. We could still redesign this room, like you said, for all the meetings. And then whether over time, financially, service over there, coming up with a design of how that room would function over there, being its size and horrible acoustics, doesn't eliminate that. So how would we go about seeing this? Do we have like long buffet
When-
tables in the village that we could lay out?
I did this like last week. I had a community member bring me 6-foot banquet tables so I could like lay them out
Oh, you
and
really-
measure.
here?
Yeah.
Oh, you did it?
I already did this. That's where this drawing came
Oh.
from. And Don and I moved all the tables and then set up all the banquet tables
You do
and
it all.
decided that like the 6-foot isn't enough in the back. We need an 8-foot back there and 2 6-foot here. So we did lay it out because I couldn't visually really picture what we were talking about. And then very poorly, I
And then you're
recreated
thinking
it
the table
here.
that's running along there, you
Yes.
all sit on that side.
We
So
all sit
Dana
on
would,
this side,
Dana would go over to
including
the other
Dana.
side, which would open up more public seating.
Exactly, because then we don't have these giant clunky tables and we can bring you forward and bring us back a little bit. Then look at this table right here is so wide, it takes up all of this space here in the middle. Like by narrowing the tables, we
two
can
more
kind of
rows of
move
chairs.
closer together, but it creates more space. I mean, it doesn't solve all the problems and you know, the things that I outlined in the memo for moving them over to the church, those were generally positive too, other than like time, there's a financial constraint, there's definitely like an internet concern over there. Whatever council decides, but this was just us trying to think of all the options. So I did do that. We have some lovely community members who came in bright and early with banquet tables and helped me move everything and lay them out, and that's where I got this drawing.
So will we buy tables?
I would say we would buy tables because I would want a very specific width of the table. I don't want you to have a full banquet table because then you get kind of like smushed in the back. So I've looked, and Don, our code enforcement, has the exact measurements, and he has more of the math if you want to see that. So I would propose buying 1 8-foot and 2 6-foot table that is a little bit narrower than a regular sized banquet table.
So it looks like we would increase, resident seating from 20 seats to 35 seats, which is an increase of 70%.
Yep.
At the cost of 2 banquet tables and 35 new chairs.
Correct.
Okay.
No, 3 banquet tables, an
Oh,
8-foot
3
and 2
banquet tables.
6-foot tables.
Okay, which I'm sure we could buy at like a government contract price.
I'm sure.
Okay. So
The only other cost that I could see associated with is when we get this settled, is if the microphones that we currently have are still serving us. They take up space on your table, they are tall, they're kind of blocking your face. I know that we haven't had them for that long, I'm not necessarily proposing replacing those, but if we're looking at this, it might be time to get a shorter, more compact microphone that's, you know, that could be an additional.
Well, I know one of the items that was discussed for if and when we were to go and set up meetings at the church was the need for microphones. So
Correct, yep.
we
So-
could store these for when we
For
need to
church.
transfer, and then buy newer, lower, maybe something that picks up the voice a little better.
Yeah, I would
A more
suggest
modern-
that
a
probably,
little
take up
pod
less space
thing
on your
that sits,
table and, yes,
Would we still get to keep the tape on the front there?
forever.
So love the idea. The only thing that I do want to raise is the space I will take. Are we gonna get that many more chairs in? Because I'm just like looking at the space that we have. If I just wonder, because like the one blocking the doorway, like I don't know how far over we can get and then we can't really move the podium in front of the screen. So like regardless, we are minimizing the dead space a little bit, but we still will have dead space from essentially the projector to here. But semantics, because this is still a very good proposal.
This is just my estimate based on, we have these very small folding chairs over here.
Gotcha.
And I wouldn't recommend those
Yeah,
as
yeah,
our
yeah,
chairs,
right.
right? So when I was kind of laying out chairs, I'm using that plus a little bit of space, thinking the chair we end up will be somewhere between
Right.
that and that folding chair. It's an estimate of how we can, but I've noticed even when we have overflow and we're expecting it, we start bringing out folding chairs, I can fit a ton of those in this space. Now, those are very small and we compact them, so I'm not suggesting it's apples to apples here, but I know that these wooden chairs are occupying way more space. I mean, some of them even have armrests on the sides of them, like they just are larger. I think I can do better with the chairs.
Small request on the table, if we're gonna consider, getting surfaces, or if they're gonna be charging on this table, like getting outlets on the table for
I think that's a
charging
great
ports.
point. We should absolutely
for-
look at that.
Yeah, I don't even think these outlets work, right? Okay.
I don't know, I've never used that.
Yeah.
But
But we have plugs in the ground right there, right?
we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we
So
also,
we're like running,
yeah.
this is
Like-
a fire hazard, has to be.
And to Abby's point, can maybe we get 10 more comfortable chairs for the
Yes.
commissioners, you, Peter, Dana?
I'd like to
And then-
request a plaque. on that too.
And then the 35 chairs be, just because like if we're here for 6 hours, the residents may be here for 60 minutes. And would we like to vote on a budget for this redesign?
Or, well, I think I would prefer is that if we're kind of leaning more to redesign, let me put together a budget for
Yeah.
you.
Get us
Let me
prices.
actually look and take
Yeah.
some of this feedback. I didn't wanna spend too many resources on something if we weren't even gonna consider it, but if we're gonna maybe look at this as an option, allow me to create a budget and like a cost estimate for you to look at your next meeting, and then I'll repurpose our memo, we'll talk about it again if that works.
I appreciate this because I think that with the earlier discussion during the priorities meeting of remote participation, being able to engage the public is not only physically engage the public and make them feel welcome at the meetings, but virtually engage the public. So I wouldn't want to spend $50,000 on physical engagement when we might need some of that money for virtual engagement.
Agreed, and this proposal, while I was building it, I'm obviously thinking about, how can we do this really economically and in a cost-saving way that's still gonna be, meeting the needs that we have. So I definitely designed it in that sort of time frame and, had a lot of help to sort of map this out and think about it. So I appreciate everybody that was helping me kind of do that and allow me some time to get you a real cost estimate and maybe a better rendering than the one I have here, but we can continue this conversation because I think it's important too, so,
Thank you so much.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, now we're moving on to our new business. First item is consideration of the proclamation for Arbor Day 2025.
Is this the old one? Because it says Bill Lamont as president.
Yeah, there's a typo down there.
Yeah, it's not an old one, but it is a typo.
So, Arbor Day, as we all know, is once a year. This year, they are having it on Friday, April 25th, unless it's always that day. I don't know the answer to that. And as we have in the past, we make a proclamation that sets aside that date to be Arbor Day and recognize the planting of trees and the value of trees in our community. So if someone wants to make a motion to proclaim Friday, April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day, in which case I would read the proclamation and entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to consider April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So should I read the proclamation?
Yeah.
Village of Franklin, County of Oakland, proclamation Arbor Day 2025. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture the special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, provide habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood, for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore be it resolved, I, David Goldberg, Council President of the Village of Franklin, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 25th, 2025 as Arbor Day in the Village of Franklin. And further, I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day, to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, and to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations.
Here, here.
Here, here. It's a good day. All right, next item is consideration for the resolution for the West Nile Fund Program. As we all know, the county has a program. They supply various supplies to the various communities inside the county. We have allocated to us this year $493.33 to use to buy personal mosquito protection measures and mosquito larvicide distribution. They give you the little things you put in the puddles in your house that are designed to kill mosquitoes. These are distributed for free at the village office. All you have to do is come in and get one. And 493, I assume, gets us a pretty good supply.
It does, and consistently our residents do use them. Every year we have people coming in asking for them, and we normally get rid of almost every one that we've distributed out. So it is a used program here.
All right, so we need to consider authorizing Meg to reach out and apply for the, I don't think it's a grant, the allocation of funds for the Village of Franklin to spend on West Nile virus prevention measures. Can I get a motion, or let's get a motion, then we can discuss.
Oh,
We got a motion from David, we got a motion to David, we'll go second from Angelina. Discussion.
Will there be any village representation at any of the events this summer that we could give these to, like the ticket booth at the Labor Day Roundup, or Music on the Green, or like the block party, so that way when someone like buys their drink ticket, we're like, take a West Nile.
We can definitely
Prevention kit too.
We could definitely accommodate that. The problem with having a village table is at normal events, all four of us are already working the event.
Bring them to the event?
But partnering with, the FCA when they're having an event, or the Historical Society when they're hosting Music on the Green, that is definitely something that we can look into.
Okay.
The only downside to that is, though, like a Labor Day event, we're not just Franklin residents there. These are
That's
designed
also
for
a
Franklin
good
residents.
point. That
So
is a good
we
point.
should be handing them out to everyone. It's not hard to get it in the newsletter, and
It's in the newsletter every year.
it is, yeah.
Oh, I was just thinking, or the library? No?
The library
The
for sure.
library might be a good spot.
Because then somebody who's going in there at least should be, is
Yeah, because they
coming
have
to
like COVID
Franklin for a
kits.
purpose. I mean, the Labor Day
Yeah.
Roundup, there's thousands of people
That's
outside
true.
our
And
community.
it's not like we get tons and tons of these with
Right.
these 400.
They would get
dollars.
If the library would like to pass them out,
Yes, I can check in on that.
you
for
would give them a
sure.
basket.
Okay, so,
What? You don't like that yet?
The library is like all-purpose.
you are all-purpose. All right, so can we get a motion to authorize Meg to purchase our allocation?
You have a motion and a second.
We already did that? I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. Have at it.
So the next one I don't want to spend a ton of time on, but I do want to get this on here and just decide as a council. We had Andrea come and present her social media about what she had been doing with us. She's definitely upped her output on social media in the last month or so. And because she was hired under the last administrator, that wasn't necessarily a service that we took out for bid. And so I wanted to check in with council, see where they felt about our current social media and about putting out to bid, you know, to see what we have out there. The only thing that I would say is I would like to keep Andrea in place until I have someone else. If we open a bid process and she is not the contractor we go with, I would like to be able to keep her working with us until a new one is in place. Because we are gaining momentum, and to lose all of that would be hard, and that's not the tasks that she's doing for us. The service she's providing is not something that we can just easily pick up over here, and I don't want us to fall off the face of the earth in regards to like our Facebook and our social media.
What would be your ideal outcome with that? Because what she established last time is we went from nothing to something.
Yeah.
Right? So there was that. But if you're thinking, what would someone in that capacity bring the most value to you and your team, what would you be looking for?
I think a lot of the things that I had talked to Andrea about incorporating that we're seeing more of. For example, one, I need someone who's going to be really collaborative, looking at all of our different community groups and cross-promoting without me feeding that information. And she's now looking at other calendars, and she creates, you know, notification on our Facebook for those other events, so we see that. Two, just independent content creation. You know, we all know that people are more likely to stop and watch a 10-second video than to necessarily read a post. So more video, promotion of our downtown area, making sure that we're highlighting our events. Now, I will say Andrea did a great job highlighting events. She got us on the news. We had a segment on Fox for it. We were in the newspaper for the Frankenstein Frenzy, and like I would expect that same level to continue for Block Party per se. It's about really being able to require minimal supervision really from us and be able to really generate the content independently. Obviously, we have to check and approve everything that goes out. That's not what I'm suggesting, but as far as being creative about ways that we're engaging on social media and other forms of communication, I need someone who can independently do that. And I do think that that's a little bit above the ask of an intern. To where we would need some sort of professional to help us with it. Now, could we take on interns to supplement? For sure, in other areas, but I'm looking to keep a professional on to manage that. I think Andrea, in my experience, honestly, she gets brought on before me, and it was really slow. I didn't really see much from her necessarily in the fall, and that might not be on her. I was brand new too. I didn't have time to feed her content. She didn't know Franklin yet. There was a whole learning curve. Then we get to January, we're still kind of in the same place, and so I have a conversation with her about like just some expectations and what we need to see over there. And I would say in the last 2 months, I've seen a complete uptick and change in the content that we're getting put out there. If she had been consistent with kind of what I'm seeing right now from the beginning, I would be advocating wholeheartedly to keep Andrea. And to be clear, I think she's fabulous to work with. I think she's clearly very professional and good at what she does, and I think in the last few months I've really seen what she can bring to the table, and so I do have interest in expanding on that and not losing any momentum on this.
So 2 questions. How much is her current cost?
Her current
'Cause
cost
it's
is
gonna go up.
$2,000 a month.
But
It will go up to $4,000.
So we're doubling our costs.
Well, we'll have to see, because she would have to submit, if we agree to have a bid, to
Yeah.
open the bid.
So this is my only. I gotta admit, I'm pretty apprehensive, and the reason for that is kind of twofold. It was entirely dropped on you, right? Like it was something you inherited that there wasn't strategic direction for, and I get that there's momentum, but like we're talking $48,000 a year,
That's too much.
and I don't understand, like there's no end in sight, right? Like this is a person that we're contracting out for, and the goal that we're orientating ourselves for is not a stop point, right? Because the content that she's producing is more informative, right? So it's not working towards a goal. So it's like, to me, I struggle with the, where is $48,000 gonna get us? Like, how are we moving the needle for our residents? And I'm always advocating for getting more communications out to the community. I just don't know that if we pause for a second to breathe and kind of figure out what those next steps are and how it plays into your broader communication strategy, that we're going to set ourselves back in a way that materially harms ourselves.
It's a fair point. I would say that if we were to take a pause, it's about managing expectations. No one in
Yeah.
this office
Yes.
is gonna go check a community calendar and be making those type of posts. You know, if we're talking about like permanent momentum loss, I don't know about that. It's more about the fact that if we've decided not to move forward with Andrea, our expectation needs to be, we're working on getting someone else, we're putting out what we can, but daily posting and all of that extra, that can't fall back onto us and the staff. I also think that the bid is important, because for me, Franklin doesn't need $4,000 of your work a month. You know, $2,000 is what we have been paying. That seems fair for the amount of output that we need here in Franklin, which is different than other governments. Now, we'd have to put a bid out to see what that work would be, but I would argue if this was a conversation straight up, Andrea Walker's contract is $4,000 a month. That feels really high for me for what we need social media out of. Now, maybe we're not using Andrea to her full capacity, maybe there would be more that she could be doing, maybe, you know, and then we could discover that later, possibly. From where I sit right now and what I see and kind of what I expect out of social media, from my own perspective, $4,000 a month seems very high. I would so much rather have a part-time person working here and answering the phone to and running around to, and, you know.
Yeah.
But $2,000 a month is a different situation, so.
Pete?
So, before I heard this very large dollar amount, I was going to sing the praises of Andrea, but obviously, yeah, it's a significant amount of money. All I can speak to is that I have met her and worked with her, and her ability to publicize and connect with media channels for the appropriate issues is really powerful. I don't know if the village has ever done it before, really, but, you know, she was remarkable in getting media exposure and media access quickly. And she is a great professional, too.
I agree with you. I've only had positive experiences. Now, definitely a slow start. There was a lot going on. We're in a different spot. I think that based on what I've seen in the last 2 months and with some coaching, like, we could be getting, Andrea could be doing a great job for us, but then that would bring up the other discussion is it $48,000 a year worth of?
So what she's saying is she's sort of been doing it at a discount now?
That's where her current contract
And the amount of work that she's been giving us at the $2,000 rate is what would typically be the same amount of work for $4,000?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure she's a professional. This does not rock my socks off. Like,
I've been working
I'm not
for you,
saying
now
I'm
my
an
bill rate
avid,
doubled.
obsessive consumer of social media, but if we're gonna.
You are an advocate.
Pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But all kidding aside, it's like,
That's a
there's
lot.
no way that makes sense to me. What you want is consistency and a content calendar. And you also want, for that amount of money, it is a business decision I could not stand behind. I'm sorry.
I
I
agree
can't.
That's not what's on the table
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. I agree with Trustee Gates and Trustee Sally. I would like to see social media development be part of a business development role in the village, because the majority of what she's doing is promoting Main Street events. And we don't have a separate Franklin Village social media channel. So to me, that responsibility should lie with a economic development director.
And
who-
can I just make one real quick statement to that point, just for our consideration on it, is when we previously put out applications for candidates for the Economic Development Director, the final 2 candidates that were there or were being considered, one was heavily focused on like true economic development, like strategic economic development, and the other one was more of a promotional person. And so it's not far off your consideration that a lot of people view those roles kind of combined.
As an HR person, though, I gotta say, I mean, you've gotta be very careful about how much you're asking a single person to do. Because it's a very large ask to basically take a downtown that's lost 6 businesses. So you've gotta develop that and put together a full content marketing strategy and execute on that strategy and interface with the community. It's a really big ask.
But I used to work that job. And I can
Exactly.
speak from firsthand experience that social media and marketing for the village, especially since that role isn't just Main Street, but it is actually a function of the village, that is doable. Now, what I ran into is time constraints and general skill limitation. I'm not a marketer. So there were certain campaigns that I wanted to run that I had to partner with Bloomfield Cable or Carrie Lazat. We hired her to do a whole video series. So my point in saying that is there were projects that exceeded my expertise or time or ability, and those were ones that required contracting out. But for the most part, for the day-to-day, for the way that we're seeing social media, it was something that I was able to really incorporate into that role, and the right person could do that. And I would also suggest a totally different conversation. If economic development was doing social media, I would take on a high school or college intern immediately, because that person would be so useful, and then they could be helping. But can an intern carry all of this weight? Not to my standard, probably, honestly.
But to me, I haven't seen a quality standard. Like, I follow her and I see what she posts, and she's always like, and I don't honestly, I don't think that the village strategically needs to be posting about Groundhog Day. I don't think the village strategically needs to be, asking about, the first day of spring. Like, I don't see the strategy behind the content. And to me, when you said you have to approve it, that's like another task you have to do, where if we had an in-house economic development director who had social media promotion as part of their responsibilities, that person we hire would be a senior level professional, and they would have approval authority for posting. And then if they had an intern or a co-op student, from Wayne State or OU, that person would need approval from the economic development director, not from you. So then it takes it off your plate, and you have the communication strategy for the village, and they align that social media content underneath your full communication strategy. And I think pausing to see, that maybe when we want to attract that really savvy economic development director and we have to up their offer by $10,000. Well, hey, we were gonna hire Andrea for 24, so if we give you an extra 10K and you want to take on social media promotion, and we put it in KPIs and we have performance and we have leverage over that, I see that as if we hire, we can put it on staff, so that way we can direct it, scope it. You don't have to do approvals. She doesn't have to come to you for content. The person's invested in the village. We're not a client, but we're their, home. I see that as being a better role for this as we start to engage in social media, resident outreach.
And Meg, one of the things that really jumped out was, as you were describing how you previously did it, it was when you have something that exceeds your scope, that's exactly the point of, you have a target, you hit it, the service is out, right? So we're not this continuous payment to a position that's not your staff.
Yep.
So I would add, along these lines, my experience with David Leclerc, Pam, David, I think, David, you may remember David Leclerc briefly. But at the time with the Planning Commission, the impression he made on me, it was the first time I had ever heard someone speak strategically about the Village Business Center and what could be done with the downtown village. I believe that the village could be developed into something that is more Franklin and more things, I guess I'd say, more perhaps more utilized, interesting things. We have interesting things going on, clearly, new restaurant, other possibilities. But that economic development component, which I had never seen in 13 years, I'm sure we've done things in the past. You're right. I guess what David Leclerc brought, his approach, that depth of knowledge of business development, understanding of making little business districts work, having concrete ideas of doing them. For me anyway, it left a big impression, and having that kind of professional expertise, people who do this kind of thing for a living, had great value. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So, to put a pin in this and kind of like get us back on track, what I'm proposing here is moving forward and opening up, taking bids on this, but, well, that's what I was proposing. But that kind of bled over to, do we even really need to do that if we're gonna have a discussion about positions, which we're gonna talk about in our closed session? So I would recommend, like, I've definitely heard all of this information here, maybe this conversation continues. Depending on how we land with positions in the village, we either are strategic and build this into an economic development role, knowing that they'll reach a limit of their skills and, resources and have to tap out sometimes, knowing that it will probably look to bring in some extra help, like a intern or someone for content creation. And if we don't decide to move forward with the economic development position, then we start moving forward and just putting out bids and looking at what we can get there and continue the conversation later.
Yeah.
When does her contract expire?
It's month to month.
It's month to month,
Oh, it
but
is.
it's been
Okay.
6 months.
I have a lot of empathy for your concern about continuity. I wonder how everyone would feel about continuing her on a month-to-month.
Is there anyone under staff that can provide like
No.
a level below?
No. We're just like, so we
Does it
used
have
to
to
do
end?
social media in here, we had an extra person working here.
Yeah.
There was an economic development director. I don't have anyone other than office is gonna be closed during this time, we're flooding, who's gonna be able to make social media
But I
content.
just want to
To
be
me, that's
clear
enough.
that, well, and
For now.
again, it's just, what is our expectation, right?
Right.
So like for me, I would much rather just say, I'm fine putting my expectation to the side on what the social media output is right now, for us to strategically move together, rather than kind of just putting out posts that frankly, while appreciated, I don't think are making a material impact for our community.
You don't, okay.
I have seen, I would volunteer if needed, but to post just like business hours, like closing, to me is sufficient. And then reposting, the Franklin's Instagram, like they have so many followers, they're not even open, over 1,000, and we still have 200. To me, it's like, I don't see that she's not even reposting their videos, which are like garnering so many views and comments. So I just don't know, like, if she's looking at holistically of like leveraging the brands of the village within the village, and how, and if she can give more time to do that. And then if we keep her month to month, it's $4,000. It's not the same rate. We don't have KPIs for her. Meg doesn't have time to approve all this. And the argument of continuity would still be the argument if we gave it to a new social media person, unless we decided we were gonna sole source to her. There's always gonna be a continuity issue with going and transferring and changing to a new vendor.
So I started to say that, and would like to finish that thought. Your question was, I think your question is, I'd like to move to, are you guys okay with paying this person her regular rate? It sounds like no. We've talked about putting that contract out for bid. We've also talked about redefining the role of the economic development director. My comment and question to everyone is, that's not gonna happen tomorrow. What do you think about, and Meg talked about continuity. I think there's value in that, and social media presence. Long-term, David, you're right. It probably isn't gonna hurt the village, but we are coming into event season here. And you pointed out that there isn't a resource available to put out the level of social media that we might want in our busiest visitor season. So what do you think about holding on to her for 2 months while we figure out that economic development director position?
You making a motion?
And continuing on a month to month. We've been discussing, I'm looking for feedback. If you want me to make a motion on for that, I will. But you know, we're talking openly right now.
Yeah, I mean, again, my personal opinion is I get your point on like the season that we're at.
Yeah.
I just don't know that it moves the needle.
Yeah. I would be against the motion. I would vote against it.
So, all right, so then what you're proposing is ceasing any postings until
No, Meg said that they could still post, like, when the village is closed, and, like, it would be a month, like, one post a month. Like, here's kind of like the balloon flyer. Like, I love what FCA has done that you put in the newsletter. They laid out all their events. That post could stay for 1 month. Like, that's their event post for the summer. You know what I mean? Main Street Board could, we have a meeting next week. Like, why can't we talk about, hey, they're only gonna be able to post once a month from the village. Can we post once every other week? I think that we could fill the gaps to, be considerate of event season without spending $4,000 a month.
I can commit to getting the minimum on Facebook. Like, we can promote the block party, we can, minimally, I can let you know what's coming up, and like, I can do that. And my staff can do that. But as long as we're all clear about the expectation, because while we work this out, that would have to slow way down. I'm not gonna make the libraries having a meet and greet, posts, because we don't have time to do that. So if we were clear, like between administration and council, what losing Andrea would mean for the frequency of posting, I can say as an administration, I will make sure that what needs to be on our Facebook continues to be posted on our Facebook, that that the content would slow down until we find another solution. Or we keep Andrea and we keep the level that we have until we find another solution.
Because I just come down to the practicality of it, which is like, I would only care if I'm getting complaints from residents, right? Being like, where are the communications? To which I would respond, we're pausing it for right now because it was gonna cost us $4,000 a month. And they're gonna be like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Do we have a content calendar stretching into the foreseeable future? Do we know what was planned to be posted?
No, Andrea would have created that content calendar, so she's not gonna, with her team.
Right, I'm
They're
just
not gonna
saying.
give us that. We don't own that content
Do we have it
calendar.
already?
But do we have it for the month of April?
No, I don't have it. They use a completely different software to manage their content. That would be an inside internal operations.
Huh.
And if you were gonna disengage with me, I'm not gonna share my work
Yeah,
with
I thought
you.
she produced she told at Trustee Gates' last meeting that she produces a monthly content calendar that she sends you.
No, I don't have.
So we don't even know like what the plan is.
Yeah, so I thought that was.
Yeah, part best, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I tend to think that what you just proposed, Meg, makes sense. I think we could get through for now. And overall, I think this makes more sense to be an internal function. And so expanding the role of someone in the village, and if it takes a little while to get there, I think that's okay, but it would come at a significant savings to the village.
All right, so this is leading to what we've sort of been having some underlying discussions on, which is we probably need to either better or redefine the role of the economic development director, and it sounds like whoever we're gonna look for that position needs to have some social media abilities as well.
Absolutely, at least be very upfront around the expectation, and that doesn't just include Main Street, but would include the village as a whole.
Didn't you say when you were going through unused money earlier that we had 40,000 allocated for an employee we never engaged?
Yes, for a part-time employee that we did.
So it would
engage.
seem between the economic developer director's salary and that person's salary, that there should be sufficient money to pay someone that's capable of doing
So that's
both
part
those things.
That's
of the economic development director salary. So it was 40K plus the 12K plus what Susan is being paid for splitting her duties.
in our budget, we had $75,000 for a economic development director. That 40,000 was separate.
Yeah.
It was another part-time, so
Right,
yes to
that's my
that.
point.
And in fact, when we get later today and we start talking about individual salaries, I have a lot of data that we can kind of
Right.
use to sit through and decide how we want
And
to
that's
go
a,
with that
that's a
position.
decent salary for an economic development director to incorporate.
Here, yes.
Yeah, to incorporate in,
That's a no-brainer, honestly.
a social media piece is not.
It's just a part of it.
It's
It
not-
is-
No,
it is
no, that's what I
filling-
mean, yeah, it's just a
it's
part
top
of
the
it.
funnel.
And it
It's-
would
it's just
not
keeping
be,
the funnel going.
overwhelming them or taking away from their ability to do other things. It goes part and parcel.
And I would argue that's not even gonna really affect our candidate pool, because anyone who's trained in economic development is also trained in community
I would hope.
engagement and knows that that's part of economic development. And just like we said, we had the two applicants, right?
Yeah.
Business, structure, and marketing. Those are the two components of economic development, so I would
Seems like they go hand
argue.
in hand, that it should be the same.
Yes.
thing.
I brought this up to the Main Street Board last meeting because Frank and Susan were going to the Main Street Conference, and I was like, Frank, can you bring back how economic development directors are using AI and technology to promote businesses? He's like, I can tell you right now, there's gonna be so many sessions on AI and technology in Main Street. And I was like, oh, good, because bring it back to us. Do you remember when you said
Yep.
that?
And so I would feel confident that competitive candidates that we'd be looking at would have that skill set. They would be expecting to have that as part of their role. And so I don't think we're being like ridiculous or creating a position we're never gonna be able to fill or this huge threshold. Nope, I think that anybody that would be competitive for that position would absolutely be able to output the level of social media that we're looking for.
So is that what we want? That ask Meg to put that together. In the interim, are we parting ways with?
You wanna take a vote?
I think we should take a vote to probably finish out, I mean, we obviously already have a month, we're in the middle of a month, so we need to finish that out.
Probably need to
Should
give
need
the
any more-
30-day term on
Yeah.
that contract.
So I would say by the end of May that
So
we stop.
keep her engaged through May,
Yep.
Yeah.
gives her an
That'll
opportunity to look for other business that
That
she's
basically
losing
takes
from
care of
us.
my concern, because we should be able to get.
But if
things
it's
done
month to
by
month,
May.
Yes.
I read the contract. There was nothing in there about 30-day term. You read it too.
We do have
It
her,
wasn't in a contract, but maybe we can give 30 days notice.
we do have her engaged in like 2 or 3 projects right now that for Main Street that are almost done, that are not done, that I would just like to
Okay.
Let's just
finish.
keep her through May,
Yeah.
and
Is
then by then, you
she-
should have a new,
4 or 2,000.
She's 2,000 right now.
Through May, she'll be
Yeah.
2,000.
Through May,
So we
okay.
will not execute a new contract.
No, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna
Okay.
execute any new contracts on that. We'll give her notice right away, saying that our agreement ends at the end of May. In that time frame, we'll reframe the position, kind of what we're looking at, and have a better plan. And
Okay.
then we'll manage our expectations till we get someone in.
So should I make a motion to continue Andrea Walker's contract to the end of May at the rate of $2,000 a month?
That would be great.
I think you want to frame it to end the contract as opposed to continue.
Okay,
That doesn't give it an end date. So.
okay,
end it by-
so we will
If that's what you guys want.
terminate or end?
yeah, end the contract.
End the
The
contract.
month-to-month contract ending the last day of May.
Yeah, at the same rate
Of 2,000.
of $2,000 a month.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So this next item, already 8:25. So, here's the deal. So, this was to discuss the wireless and small cell wireless communication facilities and consider scheduling the first reading. What I'd like to do is let's just go ahead and schedule the first reading for next month. What I'd like to do, rather than spending time on this ordinance, so we directed the planning commission to take the existing ordinance, which covered small cells as well as traditional cell towers, and bring it into compliance with state law, which apparently they did. Now, I watched those meetings, and a theme that developed throughout the course was sort of this idea of, well, there are areas in here where we have quote-unquote leeway or ability to inject our own thoughts. I'm not really interested in going back and spending our council's time rereading a statute that's consistent with the already existing statutes. What I'd like is, when we come back for our first reading in a month, is I'd like Chris Dusen to give us a list of the few areas where they've taken leeway. And then we can decide whether we want to take that leeway, what risk it gives us in taking that action, and focus on that. And if we want to do those, great. If we don't want that, otherwise, let's rely on our planning commission that they've rewritten an ordinance to be consistent with the statute, because it's 15 pages long, it's minutia, it's nothing that we really need to bother ourselves with. Let's focus on the things that we have the ability to control, and whether we want to control them or not. So I'm just would like to have a motion to schedule the first reading. Pete, I'll give you a sec. Schedule the first reading of the wireless and small cell wireless communication facilities statute for our next meeting.
Second.
Okay, discussion, like Pete?
Just as due course, that I think is an excellent approach. We spent several meetings discussing it. I was just trying to find where that leeway was as well in my own mind, and all the details we went over, and it is challenging. It would be great to have it in the form of a summary.
I don't want any of us to try and figure that out, because we'll never be able to figure that out. Chris is the only one who knows it, so let's get a memo from Chris.
And I will say that, you know, I would say there was very few material things of significance. We talked about camouflaging. We can't discriminate against camouflaging. There were some setback issues. We can't discriminate. If we allow it for telephone poles, we got to allow it for cell towers. We talked about some fencing issues, some signage issues, power outage reports, co-location requirements. So all fairly minimal things,
Okay.
nothing of significance.
All right, good.
Yes,
Perfect.
clear on that. So
Okay.
I will have Chris prepare us a memo, and we'll bring it back at our next.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the first reading. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, excellent. Next item are, processes. Angelina, I mean, we're
Yeah.
running late and we still have to go into closed session.
Yeah.
So if you want to just give us a breakdown of what you're looking at, and then maybe we'll get it on the agenda for more discussion next month.
So right now, the village staff is able to approve event applications for the Krieger House and Krieger Barn, but they're not able to approve event applications for the Village Green. It comes before council, and I think that Meg and her staff are fully capable of approving civic event permits without the vote of council, and then it doesn't create a 30-day lag period between an applicant and their approval, so they can start planning. I would like to delegate civic event permit authority to Meg, and that authority be delegatable to a member of her staff. It can also include a caveat of, if she feels like it's an event that you need to escalate to council, it would still come up here.
She always
But
has that
from
ability.
what I have seen in 5 years, the council has never not approved an event. And I feel like it takes up time off of our calendar, even with the consent agenda, especially when it wouldn't prohibit a applicant from coming here and speaking to an event during public comment, but it would also allow better efficiency for village business, and then give Meg more autonomy and authority for that.
All right, so for the most part, every single permit that ever comes through this office is already permissible under the zoning ordinance that we created for all this land. So theoretically, the FCA does not even need to ask for a permit to have Labor Day Roundup. The only things that anybody needs to ask for is when they want to use our land. They don't need permission they're not here asking for a permit for Roundup. What they're asking for is art fair, because art fair is on the village green. You don't need a permit to have an art fair on the village green, because it's already permissible in the zoning. The issue is, they need to come to us to use our land. So
And
that,
police.
well, no, absolutely, all of those
Yeah,
services. So again, I don't have a problem if we're comfortable with our staff issuing permits, and if it's something that you're not comfortable with, or maybe it's something we haven't had here before. I mean, most of these are repeat users anyways, and we've seen how they operate, and for sure, those don't even need to be wasted with consent agenda, but I don't have a general problem allocating stuff to our staff.
I feel comfortable that we would be able to do that. I always have an opportunity to speak to during my administrative report, so I could always pay homage to any that I had seen coming through. And then, of course, we can have those conversations with applicants that extend the ability to come during public comment and address the council and talk to the public about it as still being available. So I don't see any issue with that. Anyways, I have to review them all already. I sign off on them before they get to you, so.
You're the ones who circulate it to the police chief, to the pastor, or to Mark, whoever makes the approvals over there?
Yep, Dana takes care of coordinating with all of the other collaborators that we get the sign off.
We're
I
doing it
always sign
anyways.
off last, once everybody else is there, and then I do a final review before it comes, so I'm definitely comfortable doing that, and we'll still remain very cognizant to be promoting these events and making sure that they have space to talk about them.
Yeah, I don't even know if we need to take a motion. I mean, do we want to vote on that as a council, as a body?
Act by resolution for the charter.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, I'll move to delegate a civic event permit approval authority to the village administrator.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Meg, we have faith in your ability to make decisions.
Yay.
Maybe we should want to up that $10,000 ceiling pretty
Yeah.
soon too. Never mind.
Are we doing anything on yours?
I have a resolution I want
Yeah.
to put to the council regarding the letter. Let me read it out and we can change it if you feel you want to. Council authorizes Meg to author a letter that will accompany the two-page high-level summary of a potential project called The Green to Senators Bayer and Moss requesting funding from Senator Moss's community enhancement budget for the 2025-2026 fiscal year.
Could I make a suggestion? To accompany that, I don't oppose it, would be to create a subcommittee in pursuit of the green so that we have it flowing through council, as it will be ultimately, again, the grant will be awarded to the village. The funds, if we have to do match, will come from the village. And so I think for the continuity of the village, that the council would create a subcommittee.
So my question is, and I don't disagree with the creating a subcommittee to, like we normally do, to vet things out. Is it a new subcommittee, or would it be the infrastructure committee? Like, what would be
I'm
the?
fine with it going through the infrastructure committee, but being as, I don't care if we do that or if it's a subcommittee of here or rolls into the infrastructure committee. If Pam, because Pam's not on the
Yeah, Pam should
infrastructure
be on
committee,
it.
so that's kind of why I postured it as a subcommittee rather than a committee, is to not take it. Your really good work on it, right? Like, I don't want to take away the commitment that you've given to it, so that's why I was proposing a subcommittee.
I really support that idea. This is just getting the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, there's several steps between an idea
Totally.
and executing a project.
Yep.
And this is so far away from being a project. So I really like that idea and would support it. I don't know that it's needed for this particular resolution. I tried to word it as using the caveat potential. But if you want to do an amendment to the resolution, then, you know, because of council's commitment to this potentially complicated activity, we will form a subcommittee to oversee the activities and the shaping of the project. Because that's really what we're talking about, is having conversation, what should that barn really look like? You know, there's a ton of legal issues to resolve that are gonna require help.
So I have a question. Can the resolution be to request funding for a project called The Green that looks at the village green, not just the 3 buildings and then the rest of the property we don't own? Like, what about the village green behind the library? What about the alleyways downtown? What about like, what did they call it? Like, signs to direct, you know, businesses, wayfinding signs, yes, to direct consumers and patrons to the right businesses. What about repurposing a parking lot for a green space, a Parks and Rec space, chess? Like, that's what I support the idea of developing the green. I'm just like, I don't want to rush the letter with this proposal that puts us in a really tight legal position because we don't own the property, and then we are the ones administering the grant. We're going to pay for the legal fees. We don't have title to the development. We don't. Are we going to maintain it? Yeah, so I would prefer us looking at holistically, like what makes sense for development on the green, and the sidewalk committee's already talked about this. So it's like we haven't been engaged in this. We haven't been brought into this contract. The 3 people on the infrastructure committee weren't aware of this.
Concept, not
of this concept, yeah, of this concept. So I think like the synergy and the symbiotic relationship needs to be there before I can support a letter that I'm not fully understanding the project it's proposing.
Yeah, I think you're diving down deeper than I think we need to at this stage. Also, there are other funding sources. Let's say we went to MEDC and asked them for some of what's left of their placemaking funds as a separate project. And if I call Dominic at the MEDC and he says, you know, I'm kind of interested, why don't I bring that back to our committee and say maybe this pot would be a suitable, you know, source for what you're talking about. This project that we briefly talked about tonight, I think it's going to be $1.8 million based on the estimates that were provided to me. I don't know how much of that the state would be willing to fund. What if we got lucky? The number I've been giving to the senators is $1.5 million. They did not blink. But we should continue, the whole revenue thing is, we need to start looking outside the village for that kind of stuff.
I totally
more than we are.
I mean, the sidewalk committee has talked about getting funds for infrastructure similar to Beverly Hills. It was on the front page of the Eagle, and they got 1.8 million, SEMCOG, MEDC. And so my hesitation is, are these same funding sources going to give $3.5 million to Franklin in 2 years for projects that are running parallel to each other to promote connectivity? Like,
I don't know the answer to that.
Exactly, and we as a council haven't set priorities of, does sidewalk connectivity, safety pathways, is that priority over green space development that we don't own? So that's just my hesitation, and it is true that to these senators, giving money to Franklin is giving money to Franklin, right? We are a sliver of their constituency. So they will not know the difference between, oh, but that 1.8 million was for the development of the green that's held by private organizations, nonprofit, with nonprofit purposes within Franklin, as opposed to the infrastructure committee for Franklin to connect their residents on property that they own. That's where it gets tricky, because we have to go back to the same senators, Senator Mossbear, and say, hey, and now we want money for connectivity issues to do what Beverly Hills and Farmington Hills and Bingham Farms are doing along 13 Mile.
I hear you. A point that I really need to make, because you brought it up several times, is the placemaking funds that I'm aware of, that other communities have utilized. You don't have to own the property. it's for a place.
Well,
It's to create
technically, any
place.
sidewalk funding we're getting, we don't own that property anyways either, so.
So I don't think it's necessary to use that as a constraint.
Yeah.
However, if what you're saying is, you know, great idea, Pam, and church and ball fields, but I think we need to put our collective efforts to look at new revenue sources through large grants somewhere else. Let's have that conversation.
Yeah, this is that long pause and sigh from me was the all good points being made, right? Because at the end of the day, I think we can collectively agree that we all want to see an improve. We want to support our church. We want to support the baseball fields. We want to support the FCA.
Yeah.
And Angelina, your point is extremely valid. Of like, are we losing opportunities for something for the past 3 years we've been trying to prioritize, which are the sidewalks, right? Or the connectivity, I should just say, in general. So I'm trying to figure out what a path forward is to make sure that there isn't conflict between it. And again, it goes back to the subcommittee where I think that could we get, and again, this is just a talking point. I don't know where my mind is right now. Could we do a subcommittee that would be made up of Pam and 2 people from the infrastructure committee so that we have continuity to ensure that priorities are being balanced? There's visibility into both conversations so that we can continue to move forward. Because again, I don't have apprehension to writing a resolution to earmark it. We're not remotely close on a sidewalk right now.
Yeah, and my sense is, having talked with Oakland County about placemaking funds, they're not interested in sidewalks. It's the way.
What do you mean they're not interested?
They're not interested in funding sidewalks.
Because place-making funds are
To
not
create
scoped.
place.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
stuff, but not that Oakland County isn't interested in sidewalks.
No, I'm sure they are.
Yes.
It's a matter of where do you go for the money? I'm looking at MEDC, money, funds that, and hopefully they're still available. I don't know, because I haven't called them yet pending this discussion.
Yep.
But I was advised by Oakland County to contact MEDC to look for and look at some of the placemaking funds that may remain. No, what I know about those placemaking funds is that they haven't been used for sidewalk construction. They have been used for pocket parks. Farmington has put 2 little tiny parks in their main village city area. But they're for promoting gathering places. And really what I was after was, everybody's complaining about no place to gather. That's true, and now we're gonna have another restaurant, and we still don't have a coffee shop. So it's just like, what back door can we go through to try and create some of
Meg,
those?
in your experience with acquiring grants, so like what I was talking about was whether or not we create a subcommittee, have Pam on it with 2 people from the infrastructure committee so that we're not competing against our grant pools. We don't have 2.
We want village coordination.
And so what my question is for like, placemaking, is that what you called it? What's
One of the pots is placemaking,
Okay.
absolutely, yes.
So if we were awarded placemaking, which would not scope for connectivity, we'll just say, would that prohibit us from being earmarked, just earmarked, flat out? Would they look at what we received for placemaking and exclude us from other pots?
No, because each pot is going to be looked at with their own requirements. For example, if you received a grant for placemaking, but then wanted to do connectivity, and that connectivity connected people to the placemaking,
right?
They're gonna say, and you're applying now for a connectivity grant, they're not, having received a placemaking grant is not going to defer them from issuing a connectivity grant.
Okay.
What would happen is if it wasn't placemaking, but was just general space, and now we have connectivity and placemaking both going for the same kind of same pot of money, two different projects, they're competing against each other there. But what Pam's talking about in creating the placemaking, connectivity is really a separately funded issue and a totally different priority.
The parks might be interested in some.
So I would say from experience that investing in placemaking or receiving a grant there wouldn't it wouldn't negatively affect your chance of getting connectivity grant. In fact, it probably would improve it.
Yeah.
Pete,
So-
you got a thought?
Yeah, just, having gone through this recently to some degree, and this this is difficult, the logistics are difficult, prioritizing is difficult, but having a vision on paper and having a plan ready when money does become available and tailoring it to that grant proposal, and really having it ready and showing them that Franklin has a little bit of skin in the game too, and we're ready to do it.
And I think Pam has said that continually. And you're
was
absolutely right,
acknowledging our
Pete.
experience,
Yeah,
Pete,
yeah, is that a lot of these projects, before you can get earmarked, is they need to be shovel-ready. Which means the community has to have already spent the money to set it up, even knowing that it might not happen. And unfortunately, we don't have the ability to spend money ramping up a project that we don't even know we're gonna be able to
Can I
do.
ask why we're not doing a project on village property?
No, we should, I'm just saying, in order to do
The project that was proposed was only concerning 1/6 of the scope of the project included village property.
I'm sure the village could incorporate into the project something to be done on the village green as well, to the extent we feel that something needed to be done there. Our piece that was included would be the barn and getting the barn. If you look at the budget, that would probably still be the majority of the money would be to spend turning that barn into a usable space. It's gonna be far more money than it's gonna cost to, fix the baseball fields.
So
But-
back to my
so-
proposal, I think that
So I'm just saying, there is a piece to it, but the only other piece we could add would be to add the village green. Otherwise, there's no more village land to incorporate.
And it is an investment, so timing is different, right? We've talked about that here, but say we went through this engineering and then we don't get this earmark. Well, the green and the way that we interact with these other resources here is a huge part of the village, right? This really is a very central location, and so in my head, even if the engineering didn't result in an earmark this year, I don't think it would go to waste, because if we have a collaborative committee that is mixed between infrastructure and, Pam here, and we know that this is a priority to figure out how to maintain and how to keep this space as a community gathering, then we take what we have, we tweak it, we build off it, we reuse it, we send it out for another one. If this was a very niche project that if we don't get that funding, it could never happen and it would go, it probably wouldn't be something that I would be advocating for, but because as your administrator, I'm constantly thinking about all of this space, how we use it, how we bring our community down here, what more we could be doing with it. Even if we weren't to get this initial earmark, I could see if we're having healthy conversations and they're collaborative, that the output here could still be repurposed for a million other grants that we could go for.
You're totally right, because to have a project ready to go, even though we might not be able to fund it with this type of grants,
Yep.
doesn't mean we can't still do it and fund it with other ways, even if we wanted to go out and seek private contributions. If you don't have a project ready to show the private contributors, private contributors don't want to donate money on a thought either.
No, nope.
They want to say that if I'm going to give you this money, you can turn around and immediately put it to place.
And I have seen other communities and worked in other communities where they always have 2 or 3 shovel-ready projects.
That's sort of what
And
we need
sometimes
to build up to.
Sometimes that shovel-ready project doesn't get used until the city's actually willing to invest in it.
If you
but-
think about it right now, we theoretically do. We have the Irving
Yep, the pathway.
Pathway is a shovel-ready project. It is
Absolutely.
We have the
engineered
sidewalks on
and ready to
13
go. And we have sidewalks on 13 Mile Road,
ready to go.
engineered, theoretically ready to go.
Yes.
And again, I'm not suggesting that this plan or any plan, a modified plan, But if another plan that we want to have ready to go is this overall enhancement of the village center, I can't imagine that's a bad thing to have in our back pocket.
I think that's a great idea.
I would support a plan for an overall enhancement of the village center, not the plan that was presented at the 4 o'clock meeting. I think it's too limiting. We haven't heard from the residents. There hasn't been enough engagement to get a pulse on what residents want in that area. It seems like it serves the community, the leadership of the community organizations, not necessarily the community itself. And that could be wrong, but since we have only heard from the leaders of the community organizations, and not like they've done an engagement survey, not like they've went out and polled, a focus group, I hesitate to support that without resident engagement, vocal support, data, and then again, the infrastructure, administrative investment, and resources we're putting towards developing land that we don't own. And my third thing is, have we asked the FCA if we can purchase that land from them, or if they will give us that land? Considering their bylaws say if they dissolve the land escheats to the village, they're no longer 501c3. I looked on Lara, they're not an entity that has a board that's
They'd have to
still
be dropped
alive.
from this project.
What?
They'd have to be dropped from the project. They wouldn't be able to, well, the village would receive the funds. See, how do I say this? We need to talk more about how the money would flow and what the village, if the village were the fiduciary, would expect in return, if anything. I almost, when we were thinking about this, this was money coming in the village and going out to the organizations. I mean, that's a very simple way to put it. But I'm not thinking of like owning or managing or being responsible for what the church might do.
Oh, and we'd have to.
But we'd have to.
But we may have to. I don't know.
That's how grants work.
Well, grants work in lots of different ways.
I would say for like a REP grant, the reporting on that would
Uh-huh.
have to be us.
Yeah, okay.
It would just would.
So
Now,
we'd have to do a deal with, just do a contract with them to, yeah, okay.
at the church, we would make, like, using that as a portion of the example, we would
Uh-huh.
have a threshold where, as a pass-through, and we're giving them this money that we received as a grant to do this,
Yeah.
they are expected to provide, documentation and receipts of their purchases and stuff.
Yes.
But those ongoing communications, a REP grant, we're gonna be reporting quarterly on. That's all gonna need to come through me,
Yes.
so it's gonna be up to me to be like, hey, church, what'd you do in the last 4 months, or I haven't gotten any of that, get it all over, enter it all in and do
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It is manageable,
is
but
tough,
there
yeah.
is an administrative component that I am a little bit of a type A control freak, but I think that would have to come through the village office.
And we've talked about that. I totally agree with you on that.
I can't support something that puts more work on Megan that is a priority that this council has not had sufficient time to discuss and agree on, over the other shovel-ready projects that we pretty much already have on our radar. And enhancement of the green can be a anticipatory and impending shovel-ready project, but I feel hesitation to send a formal letter to our representatives in Lansing asking for money when we would have to pull resources from our village on things that we've already said we're gonna prioritize and that the public hasn't said they want us to do.
I really disagree with you on the public hasn't said. We worked with representatives, the FCA wasn't even included in this the first round and they had a fit. The board insisted on being involved. The board does represent that organization. They listen to their constituents. The church, we talked with Tony Bull, who is the treasurer, and Mark, they run the church organization, and these are needs that they said they needed. Just on the last point with regards to the barn, in 2008, when the team that brought the barn, the Krieger barn, house, and shed over here, did a focus group. They hired consultants to conduct focus groups. I have that documentation and rolled it into the longer version. In addition, I was involved in 2 master plan community meetings of over 100 people each, and a recreation space, meeting space, enhancement of the community space was a priority in both cases. So there's 3 examples with regard to the barn. People wanted the barn to be a multi-purpose space.
So I've read all that, and that data is 17 years old. And I will not make a decision in 2025 based off data from 2008.
The master plan data is 2007 and 2015.
That's still ages old. Like, we have had such turnover in this village. And I think that 100-person focus groups are good representative samples, but not when they are 8, 12, 17, 20 years old.
So Pam,
I hear you.
can the
And I looked at
project,
the continuity of feelings over the years. It's like, whoa,
so
pay
let me ask you a
attention.
question, can the project be scaled? Because I see 4 pieces to the project.
Uh-huh.
There's the barn.
And the answer
which-
is yes.
The
That's why
barn,
it was written
which
that
is
way.
significant costs, significant decisions to be made.
Mhm.
The second is the church, which brings in a whole nother aspect of it with the whole separation of church and state
Yep.
piece. But I don't think there's a resident in the village that if you sat them down and said, we're gonna make you better baseball fields, we're gonna fix the tennis courts, we're gonna add pickleball courts, somebody's gonna be like, no, that's not a value to the, now maybe there's a bunch of residents don't consider that a priority of theirs, but I don't consider it not an enhancement to the village that people.
Sure, hang on, real quick, let me just, on that comment, again, we're talking about isolated focus groups. If you ask the FCA members what they want from the FCA, they're saying the tennis courts. It's the expectation that their dues are paying for the improvements to those tennis courts. So that's where, again, I just want to say, like, I want to support all these organizations. The question is not, did the residents ever raise whether or not they're interested in these improvements? It's at the trade-off of what?
Exactly. And right now, the FCA says it maintains its property, and we know the village does. So I don't necessarily think that those residents are aware of what their funding goes to. I know 4 years ago when I was on the FCA board, they were talking about raising money to improve the tennis courts. What happened to that money is in federal court right now. So I'm not willing to make trade-offs on behalf of our residents when I haven't heard from the residents and I haven't seen the survey or the data from the FCA membership. And I hesitate to trust an FCA board when I'm still listed as a board member on FCA paperwork according to the Michigan Licensing Committee, and someone who is no longer alive is still listed on the board. So I think there are things that we naturally would have to be diligent about, and I'm not willing to sacrifice the municipal brand or our administrators' time or this council or our taxpayers' trust in our representation to do that at this point. But I do believe in enhancing the green when it comes to future shovel-ready projects, just not this one where we're entangled with an entity that is still trying to untangle itself. And I appreciate Kathy's report, and during my council comments, I'm going to ask that they do that more regularly, because I think that is something that I would like to see from the FCA in order for us to continue this partnership. But I don't think we're there yet, and I think it's so quickly that we're acting on a project or a proposed concept to send a letter to our representatives.
Okay. I want to push for a vote on the resolution. It's late. I'm asking for
Does it have a second? I'll second it to create the vote.
Rick, did you want to make a comment? Because I'm going to move and go ahead and restate the motion.
Just on the comment that Angelina made about who takes care of the maintenance of the fields, and the FCA does pay for that. Last month, it came up,
With the grass.
I believe I checked with them, and they cut their own, they pay for their grass cutting.
We haven't received a reimbursement for.
I believe, no, they have, they're billed separately.
Well, then maybe we're getting double billed.
You can, I don't know about that, but they pay their own bill.
Richard or Jerry?
Is he billing them and billing us?
I think there's two, well, I think they're cutting their village green grass. And the FCA is paying a separate bill for that cutting. Because just put that on record.
That's been a question mark that even the finance committee has raised, so. Again, it has to do with like procurement and scoping. I know, and Meg has no time to do like this kind of stuff, and so I'm
We are
just,
cutting it.
there's so much confusion and complexity to put our name out there for funding.
Oh, we've heard from
Yep.
a trustee.
All right, so, yep, I mean, you want to call the vote?
I want to call a vote.
All right.
I'd like to send this, I'd like to have authorized Meg to draft a cover letter requesting the two senators put this into Senator Moss's budget, which is where it'll go, for consideration by the Appropriations Committee as a community enhancement project for the 2025-26 year, which starts October 1st.
And what would be the dollar amount?
Whatever was on that two-pager, I think it was about 1.8.
It was more like 2.1, but yeah, somewhere in that
2.1,
range,
yeah.
yeah.
And where would the money go?
Well, let's back up. Are we asking for the money right now, or are we just
That's
asking?
what the motion
That's what the
is.
letter
Right.
The
is.
letter would be requesting that the senators support a state appropriation for this amount to be provided to Franklin.
It would be an earmark for
It would-
1.8 or
earmark.
2.1.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm saying that just as easily, tomorrow we could write a resolution for $2.1 million for a sidewalk for connectivity across 13. That's where I was talking about, okay, if we're talking about a placemaking grant that has nothing to do with the thing that we've been trying to prioritize for 3 years, sure. But if we're asking for an earmark here and then another large earmark next year on the thing we've been trying to prioritize for connectivity, they're going to be in conflict and we're not going to get it.
Well, they come from different places.
No, they don't. No. I'm saying create the subcommittee. I don't want to go and send a resolution for an earmark for 2.1 on something we haven't prioritized until Wednesday, right? Compared to something we've been trying to prioritize for 3 years.
And just in the world of government affairs, legislation, and appropriations, pork barreling is not something that is in a good light. Like this is a very heavy thing that we're going to be asking for. 1.8 million earmarked in an appropriations bill for a concept on property we don't own.
It's not gonna matter. The property is not going to matter.
It's not about the property.
Well, then
They
stop
could do
bringing it
whatever they want to do with the property, and we couldn't stop them because we don't have any title or easement or ownership of even the use of that property.
So-
Once we enhance their property, the FCA could sell it.
Well-
And we would be,
Set that aside. Again, if the goal is to improve
can't they sell
the baseball fields, right? This is a perfect example that to kind of support Angelina's point, which is again the multiple layers here. We improve the baseball fields are improved, then the FCA starts charging the baseball team for it, and what recourse do we have? We got nothing, right? Because we don't own the land, and on top of that, the thing that we're trying to support doesn't own the land either. And so we have multiple pass-throughs to get the funds to improve the organization we're looking to support.
And we are also looking to improve that chunk of land, several acres of land just south of the commercial district that is the village and is the place where we want families to come and spend time in a beautiful historic location. That's what we want.
But that, your proposal, the total amount was how much? No, that's what we're earmarking. The total amount, it was like 20.
I believe it was 2.1 million is the version I gave you. The bigger budget was Susan's estimate for the cost of the whole thing. We can't ask for marketing money
But
and
how much is
administrative
that?
money. I think the initial draft that I showed Susan was about 2.2 million.
I would be more in favor of giving the Franklin Baseball League $40,000 to do what they want with these buildings. It's just, like, we need to think through this. Like, what are the solutions? What are the objectives? What are the goals? What are the ways to get there?
I don't mind, I think it's great to do that. I'm just saying, I'd like to get in the queue. We can pull out. Let's have the conversation. It's a good idea. The idea is a really good idea. I pulled, Susan pulled, community organizations together.
This
and
was
asked them
never
what-
on a Main Street Board agenda.
It isn't a Main Street project.
But our Main Street director.
We have an economic development director who has responsibility for Main Street, in addition to other responsibilities for economic
Okay,
development.
I thought you said that Main Street as an organization was a partner on this.
I did not write, no.
Okay, you never said, okay, so Main Street Board has not seen this, vetted
You've
this.
got two members who are on the Main Street Board. That's how the idea started generating. They were, Mark and Jeremy were talking about their desire to be part of the community, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, but Mark and Jeremy on this committee do not represent the Main Street Board.
No, they do not.
Yes, so I would also be hesitant to pursue something that the Main Street Board hasn't discussed, evaluated, or looked at, when one of the objectives of the project is to drive and promote economic development in Main Street and patron the businesses.
Why?
Because the board may have other priorities that it's working on, and just like you wanted FCA through a fit when they weren't involved in the first meeting, I can see Main Street not being happy that they weren't involved in this.
I didn't ask them. Susan sits on the.
Or the
board.
infrastructure committee.
Yeah. Okay, well, so
Well, we have a motion.
we have a motion,
Second.
we have a second. I'd like to get
So-
that letter in the
Take
hands
a
of the
vote.
senators.
Do a roll call, Dana.
A roll call.
Trustee Bears,
No.
trustee Gates,
I gotta know more about it. No.
President Goldberg,
At this point, no.
trustee Hanson,
Yes.
trustee Sullivan,
Again, at this point, no, support it, but I think we need to move it through a subcommittee where we can have more continuity about what the strategic direction is.
trustee Sulaco,
No.
All right, motion fails. So the question, Pam, is what is the deadline for the date that you need to get that in? And if we have room still, that gives a lot of people an opportunity to get their hands around this during the course of the next month.
I don't know the answer to that tonight. I'm gonna contact Senator
Okay.
Ross's office tomorrow and see what kind of leeway we have. I know that, I don't know. I'll leave it at that.
I had a date that I got emailed for a different legislative office, but it put, their date was, the 25th of, April. So I don't know
I
that
think that was
that's
the House of
consistent.
Representatives.
It was.
Yeah. It
So,
wasn't the Senate.
but quickly is
Sorry,
my
what
point
was,
in that.
what was that date?
April
25th.
Next Friday.
Is when that has to be in?
No, not for, that was for House appropriations.
Got it.
I'm just saying that, you know, if we're thinking timing and budget, the Senate's gotta, it's gotta be close to that.
Okay, well,
So,
we meet again earlier in May.
So tell me what you all want me to do.
Can we go to closed session?
I need to close this
Yeah,
out.
we can't.
The answer is no, I got that. But what, how should we proceed on this? I need some direction.
Could we form a subcommittee?
Yeah, that's my
Okay, we'll
recommendation.
form a committee, okay, and,
So Pam, we said Pam, and so it's you three, right, are the infrastructure committee?
Mhm.
So
who's
one of
on
you
the
got
infrastructure committee?
Angelina, Dan, and Abby.
Okay,
So if we're gonna inject you into this, what we'll call Project Green Committee, one of you three has to bail if you're busy.
well, we can have Susan do it, why not? Meg, could she
Versus
do
you?
what?
Are you sure? I feel like, cause at first I was like, just keep it in infrastructure and I'll speak, like, I'll be
Well,
in
you
contact
could- you
with
could.
that
I don't
and
have to be a part of
represent
that.
that part, but I feel like you have so much knowledge
You should be- you
historically,
should
I
be
think
on
Pam
it.
should sit on this committee.
Yeah, you should be on the subcommittee,
Yeah.
someone from infrastructure, and then engage Main Street Board. I mean, that would be like, I feel like state.
We need, I want,
I need two
yeah, we need,
infrastructure.
yeah.
I'll do it, Ben. Do you want to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be
I'll
awesome.
volunteer to come off of it.
Thanks.
For our committees and planning commission, ZBA, we comply with the OMA and the televise and all that stuff. So, there were recent Supreme Court of Appeals decisions that state when you delegate authority to other committees, they should be OMA compliant. I'm in favor in erring on the side of OMA. So whenever the infrastructure or any other committee that rarely meets, they should comply with OMA, regardless of whether there's a quorum of trustees.
Even if there's less than three or less.
Yeah, yeah. There's a.
So
quorum.
anytime two trustees engage in, or have been delegated authority by the larger body, are we gonna delegate the subcommittee authority, or we're just gonna tell them to discuss it? Because we're not gonna give the
heard-
subcommittee authority, right?
Subcommittees don't have any.
Yeah, they don't have authority.
I heard some language that's saying we're gonna have the subcommittee do this, or review this or that.
Well, just a proposal. So based off the initial structure, since we have two people from the infrastructure committee on it, couldn't they just roll up through the infrastructure committee? So they would merely be advisory to the infrastructure committee and make recommendations, and then the infrastructure committee
not
would
have
be
its own
subject to the
authority.
OMA.
Well, it could be a
There was a
subcommittee,
Supreme
yeah.
Court case on this in the city of Warren that did the same thing. They At different points for example, marijuana ordinance, and who can comply and who could get, and then they came back to village, or city council and recommended and said, these, many applicants applied, and we dwindled it down, so on and so forth. And the Supreme Court said that committee needs to comply with the OMA. I'd rather,
Complying with the OMA just means it needs to be published to the public that the group's
Public.
meeting.
Minutes.
But I love that, because then,
But wait, what are we saying that for all of our committees?
No,
Like,
just-
I mean, theoretically, we already raised that point. We're supposed to be taking minutes in our subcommittee meetings.
during like our finance and our legal committee meetings? I
Well-
don't even know how to accommodate that.
no, I asked that, and it was, if decisions are being made and recommendations, then OMA compliant. But
Can I just pause real quick? We need those requirements. It's probably not fair to make you try and interpret from memory. Is that material to us establishing a subcommittee tonight?
you could establish that.
And you
I
can
think
send legal,
Yeah, that would
guidance.
probably be a good idea for me to send a memo to you guys.
Yeah.
Reviewing this case.
Yeah,
Yep,
I think
perfect.
that's a good idea.
All right, so Abby, Angelina, and
no,
Pam.
Nope.
Abby, Dan, and Pam.
Yep.
No, I thought Angelina.
No,
You're passionate about this project, Angelina.
no.
I think she's passionately against the project.
No, what
don't want her on
I'm
the
saying
committee.
is at some point, will this subcommittee engage Main Street Board? Because I think they are an important partner, because like Main Street, Jeremy, the church, like, he specifically said, I am on Main Street for
I don't have a problem
this.
with that.
Okay.
I'm still back at, I don't know that any of the money that I'm looking at and I'm aware of has anything to do with funding sidewalks.
We're not
Well,
talking about
earmark.
sidewalks.
Earmarks, too.
Earmarks.
I'm talking about
Ear-
Main
earmark.
Street.
The earmark.
The Main Street
Like a
Committee.
RAP grant doesn't, but a
Right.
earmark.
Because
Yeah.
if the value proposition for enhancing the green is to bring people downtown to patron our businesses, why would we not engage the Main Street Board who represent
I don't have a
the
problem, we should
businesses?
include the Main Street Board, that's
I
fine.
really hate to do this to you, but you're making a really good point as to why you'd be a good third person on this, because you're a liaison to economic
But I'm already
development.
on the board, so I've had visibility into it. Right? When
But why, this is my question then, why do you want the input of why do you sit on the board for Main Street,
I'll tell you
and
why.
now you're influencing the voice from Main Street while not sitting on the infrastructure committee?
I'll tell you why. Because the two organizations that sit on Main Street, that wear the hats of the two organizations that are part of this, Franklin Baseball and Community Church,
Right.
are non-consumer facing businesses, non-retail businesses. They're not resident facing, they don't sell anything. They're not businesses, they're community organizations. So I feel like you don't have a business not a business perspective, you don't have the perspective or the input from a business owner in Franklin, and I think that would be a worthy perspective to have.
I think we could say that there's definitely some community engagement that needs to happen here. And as we were talking, we even noted like the library would be another good person to bring in. So what we have right now is the vote to form this subcommittee. If through the work of this subcommittee, it should be tasked, with figuring out who else we need to talk to in community engagement. But we don't have to come up with a whole community engagement plan tonight for that. That could be a path that, like, we're moving on, or something that we know we need to do.
Would you feel comfortable with you coming, I'll be on the subcommittee, but then you coming to speak to the Main Street Board about your project?
I'm happy to do
Okay, yeah, so that way, because I don't want to misrepresent the project since I'm on Main Street, but I'm happy to be a subcommittee with you, Abby, and then just like, so put it on the radar. Can we add that to the Main Street Board meeting for next month?
Sure.
So that way you can like brief it, even if it's virtually, and that way we can like get their feedback, and then when we come together, we've like checked off that box, and so I'll be on the subcommittee. You're welcome, Dan.
So it would be
So right now,
you and Abby and me?
we're gonna form a subcommittee, the Project Green Subcommittee, and this would be Pam, Angelina, and Abby.
So let me ask a question, I'm going to direct it to you. One of your arguments tonight was that we haven't, as a council, gone through a process of setting big money priorities in the village. And one of the, and this doesn't seem like it's a project, but it isn't anything close to what have been village priorities. Do you think that you can support this project? Or would your issue be you'd want to redirect the thinking to make a different request of the senators?
The project as was presented
Yeah,
tonight?
yeah.
Yeah, I voted no. I don't think
I'm
six of us.
I'm talking about I'm talking about the committee. What role will you play? What can I expect of you on this committee?
Let's meet and see what the project is.
So it would be to recast the project.
I think that you're the only council member tonight that voted for this project.
I am, you're right, I am.
So if we don't recast the project, it seems like it would be
It'd be
another
dead
no.
anyway.
Exactly,
Yeah,
so
okay.
let's find a way to yes.
Okay?
Okay. So, we need to still go into closed
Yes.
session. Do we need to do special reports today? Is there anybody that needs something to be said? All right.
No, the only thing, just real quick, is that, again, I believe strongly in supporting the community down here and the organizations, and so I just want that subcommittee to be ready. Like, you may need to meet soon to figure out what we want to do as far as going to the Senate, right, to our representatives, or to our senators, because, again, can we engage a dialogue? of like, would you be in favor of this project compared to this one? Being, you know, our connectivity compared to downtown. I don't know if we have that availability of dialogue, but again, I do want to see a path forward. So I'll leave it to that, but again, I want to also be mindful of, is this time sensitive? If it's time sensitive, will we have enough information to start to advance the ball?
Can I say something too? I know we're skipping meeting reports, but I don't understand what the public comment was about the fence and the Daniel. So at a time, can the village council be brought up to speed on the issue that they talked about? Okay. Because I personally, like, when people give public comment, you know, say Jeff Kobelman, he's like, read the preamble to the charter. I go back and I read the preamble to the charter. So I appreciate the discourse with our public, and so I just want to make sure I have the full context for what their comments were.
All right, we are gonna move past special reports. So,
I was just gonna, are you going to then omit, I have one issue that I would like to bring up if I can.
from planning?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, any direction that you want to give us, I see in our packet, we have the R3 zoning here in the historic district.
What rezoning?
I think it's R3. Yeah, for the historic district. McKenna, Chris has prepared a paper for us to look at setbacks, fencing issues. Anything you want me to convey to the planning commission regarding that beyond what Chris has prepared?
Not really.
Very good.
Thank
And
you.
I'm sure you'll be there, so.
I'm out of town. Yeah,
Okay,
so I won't.
all right.
I'll be there though and can talk about it because I know that we had it before and the scope there was a little bit of a lack of translation between council and then the scope of what planning ended up with. And so that's why we reconvened with Chris to have him to better frame what we were actually looking for.
Have you seen his memo?
Because before it, yeah.
It was in our agenda.
Yeah, it was just, it seemed to focus on one issue and it was framed totally different from what we were initially intending for him to look at. And that's why after conversation, it came back through. So I'll be there to provide insight to that at the planning commission this week.
Great.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks, Pete. All right, so,
A motion to.
yeah, so the village council needs to go into closed session to discuss our police contract,
And
as well as to discuss employee salaries. Our employees, if they're right and discretion, have asked that any conversations regarding their salaries be done in closed session as well. So I need to have a motion and a second to move into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, and then we will adjourn out of closed session, so the meeting for the rest of the village at this point is closed.
Yes.